Hey, what's up? It's Cute What If, this side. Today we will be seeing what if Deku becomes teaching assistant. Now before we move ahead with the fic, leave a like and subscribe to the channel for future what ifs like this. About an hour before lunch, you find yourself exploring the campus in order to keep yourself preoccupied. Aizawa is fast asleep in the teacher's lounge wrapped up in his sleeping bag, meaning you have no one to assign you more work. At first, you had been worried about upsetting him by going out on your own, but Present Mike quickly assured you that it was fine. The blonde had his own work to do, so you didn't want to stick around and risk distracting him since he really likes to talk when he has a willing audience. That's what led to you deciding to go on a little tour of the school. You really can't get over how huge the campus is. You have to settle for just walking around the main building since there's no way you could cover everything in the short time frame you have. You need to be back at the teacher's lounge in time for lunch, so you can make sure Aizawa eats the bento you made him. Knowing him, he'll just sleep through lunch if you don't interfere. Unfortunately, you end up getting lost about 40 minutes into your walk, so you're not sure where you need to go in order to make it back to the teacher's lounge. That's why it seems unlikely that you'll reach your destination in time. When the lunch bell eventually rings while you're trying to gather your bearings, you release a heavy sigh. Looks like you really are going to be running late to lunch. As you continue to wander the halls, hoping you'll run into someone, you come across a window and decide to peek outside in hopes you'll recognize the scenery. Instead, you see a grassy area with a tall, unfamiliar tree in the center. What has you leaning closer to the window is the spot of purple you see. After a few seconds of squinting, you realize there's a student with purple hair lying underneath the tree. It appears that he'd rather take a nap outside than go to the cafeteria for lunch. It's at that moment the familiar feeling of an oncoming vision hits you, catching you by surprise. The current scenery fades and is replaced by what appears to be a battle between Midoriya and the purple-haired student you just saw. Taking in the sight of the familiar stadium, you realize this must be a vision of a fight to be held at the sports festival, an event UA holds every year for all its students to participate in. You watch amazed as the purple-haired boy, whose name according to Present Mike's loud announcer voice is Shinsou Hitoshi, uses his impressive brainwashing quirk to command Midoriya to walk out of bounds. Just when it looks like your student will lose, he miraculously breaks free of the mind control, much to your delight. He then proceeds to fight hand-to-hand with Shinsou. As they're scrapping, the purple-haired boy starts yelling about his situation, saying how blessed Midoriya is to have a quirk that easily allows him to follow his dreams. While in Shinsou's case, he couldn't pass the practical exam because of his quirk's nature. I get it. You realize, brainwashing would be useless against the robots from the exam. He didn't stand a chance. The vision ends with Midoriya winning the fight by throwing Shinsou out of the ring. After your sight returns to normal, your gaze focuses on Shinsou who's still outside under the tree. A few seconds later, you find yourself running toward the nearest exit. It takes you a few minutes, but you finally find the right door that'll get you outside where you last saw Shinsou. On your way out, you come across a vending machine and decide to buy 2 juices before quickly stashing them in your backpack. It never hurts to have a peace offering just in case. You honestly have no idea what you're doing. By all means, this is probably one of the strangest things you've ever done. You have no reason to approach this student. According to your vision, he's from the general department, which is kind of out of your jurisdiction. Your job is to look after Class 1A and possibly Class 1B if the 2 classes are to ever do a joint activity. You shouldn't involve yourself in this kid's life just because of your stupid quirk. Despite knowing this, you can't stop yourself. Even though you shouldn't meddle in things that don't concern you, you still keep running straight for that boy. When you arrive at your destination, you take a few seconds to catch your breath. After you do that, you walk until you're right in front of Shinsou who's lying on his back with his eyes closed. Besides the color of his hair, what catches your attention the most is the dark bags under his eyes. DMN, maybe you should reconsider this. If he has sleeping problems, the last thing he needs is you coming over to disturb him. Unfortunately, before you can try to leave, Shinsou suddenly opens his eyes and aims his gaze in your direction, making you freeze. He seems surprised by your appearance, leading to him staring for several seconds. You figure it's because of your uniform since he probably doesn't recognize it. You give him a wave as you awkwardly smile. Hi, sorry if I woke you. I could leave if I'm bothering you. He moves to sit up and leans back against the tree. It's fine. I wasn't really sleeping, just resting my eyes. Your shoulders slump in relief. Oh good. At least, you haven't ruined things right from the start. That uniform, are you a student or member of the staff? His words make you jolt in surprise. You figured he'd probably be curious about you, but you didn't think he'd actually ask you. You had expected him to want you to leave him alone. Happy that he's initiating the conversation, you grin. If I tell you, will you let me sit with you? Shinsou raises an eyebrow before shrugging his shoulders. Sure. It's not like it's my personal tree or anything. You can sit wherever you want. Chuckling, you take a seat on the grass and cross your legs so that you're sitting Indian style. Okay, so to answer your question, I'm not a student. However, I'm not technically a teacher either. I'm a TOEFL for Class 1A. I just started the other day. He gives you an interested look. That explains why I've never seen you or your uniform, but I had no idea the heroics course had TAs. You rub your neck sheepishly. Yeah, there were some special circumstances that led to my sudden employment. It's basically because of my quirk. Shinsou tilts his head curiously. Your quirk? Nodding, you pull off your backpack and set it on the ground. My quirk allows me to see visions of the future, but it's random. I have no control of what I see or when I see it. It's more trouble than it's worth, but even though I'm not a hero, I still wanted to be able to help someone with it. When I got a vision foretelling danger for UA, I knew I had to tell them. And that somehow led to me becoming a Ta. Pretty crazy, I know. The purple-haired boy scratches his head. It's not like the craziest thing to ever happen, considering it's normal for people to have multiple arms or shoot lasers out of their eyes. The world's a weird place. His comment makes you laugh. He's definitely not wrong. Your quirk is pretty normal compared to some people's. You probably shouldn't complain so much about it. It's at that moment you hear a loud growling noise. At first, you think it's your own stomach, but then, you notice the light flush on Shinsou's cheeks. You give him an amused smile. Looks like you shouldn't be skipping lunch. He averts his gaze as he rubs the back of his neck. I wasn't hungry before. I was more tired than anything, so I came out here to lie down. I guess all the talking worked up my appetite. That's when you get an idea. You quickly dig through your backpack and pull out the bento you made for yourself. It's a good thing you didn't make anything today that requires an eating utensil. Shinsou just stares in surprise when you offer him an rice along with one of the juices you bought earlier. After a few seconds, he shakes himself out of his stupor and averts his gaze away from the food. You don't have to share your food. I'm fine, really. You roll your eyes. He sounds just like Aizawa. I know I don't have to. I want to. Just take the food, Shinsou. Suddenly, he freezes, making you wonder what you said to make him react like that. It's when you go over your last sentence that you realize what it was. The GD student gives you a suspicious look. I never told you my name. How do you know it? Realizing you'll have to explain a little of what you saw in your vision, you wave the food and drink at him. I'll tell you if you eat the food. Deal? For several seconds, it looks like he's waging an internal war with himself, but then, he finally accepts the food and drink. You wait until he actually takes a bite before explaining yourself. Earlier, I had a vision that you were in. I got it after I saw you from the nearby window. Shinsou raises an eyebrow after he swallows the bite he just took. A vision of me? What was it about? You take a bite of your food, so you can have a few seconds to ponder how to respond to that question. After you take a sip of your juice, you reply, I can't really give you any details since it wouldn't be fair to your opponent, but I saw you fighting at the sports festival. Well, I'm pretty sure it was the sports festival. It looked like it was a school event, and that's the only thing I can think of that makes all the student courses participate. He nods his head. That's probably what it was. I can't imagine any other event that would involve a general department student actually being in a fight. A smirk rises to his lips. Usually, fighting isn't until the later rounds. Guess that means I'll be making it pretty far. You grin at his smug look. Considering how awesome your quirk is, I'm not surprised that you make it so far, Shinsou. It's really impressive. Shinsou makes a choked noise and suddenly starts coughing, making you panic. You quickly lean over to smack him strong on the back. Thankfully, that does the trick since his breathing starts to calm down after that. You give him a concerned look. Are you all right? Instead of answering right away, the purple-haired student grabs his juice and takes a few quick sips. Rather than pester him, you go back to your own food and wait for him to speak. After a few minutes, you hear him quietly ask, Did you really mean that? What you said about my quirk? Your expression softens when you notice the slight glimmer of hope in his eyes. Of course, I did. No matter what anyone else says about it, it's an amazing quirk. You could help so many people with it, like stop hostage situations or calm people down. Hell, you could literally tell a villain to just shut up and surrender and save everyone a lot of trouble. That sounds like an ideal quirk for a hero. He snorts loudly, catching you by surprise. You watch with wide eyes as the boy quietly snickers into his hand. This lasts for several minutes, and you can't help but wonder when was the last time Shinsou laughed like this. You really hope this isn't an unusual thing for him. Once he finally calms down, a sheepish grin forms on his face. Sorry, I didn't mean to laugh that much. You smile when you notice the happy gleam in his eyes that wasn't present earlier. It's fine. I'm glad you think I'm so funny. Maybe I should consider a side career as a comedian. Shinsou snorts as he shakes his head. Just don't quit your day job. Pouting, you throw an apple slice at him, which he fumbles to catch. I don't want to hear that from the guy who just spent several minutes laughing at my obviously hilarious commentary. He rolls his eyes as he munches on the apple slice. Right. Absolutely hilarious. Your response is to throw another apple slice at him. This time he catches it without any trouble, so it's possible he was expecting it. Maybe he's doing this on purpose now to get more food out of you. If he is, it's working. The next several minutes pass in companionable silence as the two of you work on clearing out your bento. It's a good thing you packed extra with the expectation of having to share. You figured Present Mike and Midnight would want to try your cooking since they showed an interest last night when you told them you could cook. Unfortunately, it looks like they'll have to wait another day to try your food. Wanting to get to know Shinsou better, you decide to learn more about his longing to be a hero. Hey, Shinsou, why do you want to become a hero? Any particular reason? Shinsou goes still at your words before giving you a calculative look. After a few seconds, the GD student replies, I want to prove everyone wrong. I want to show them I can become a hero, even with a so-called villain's quirk. I want to surpass all those students with their heroic quirks who have it so easy and don't even realize it. I'll work stronger than all of them. A frown forms on your lips. While everyone has their own reasons for becoming a hero, and you have no right to judge, you can't help but worry about his. You understand why he feels that way, but is it really okay to be motivated so much by spite? That's when you get an idea. Tell me, would you always want to be a hero, no matter what? Even if you had grown up with a completely different quirk? He pauses to consider your question. As his expression turns contemplative, he absent-mindedly munches on another rice. A few minutes later, he answers, I've always liked heroes and have wanted to be one since I was a kid. So, I think I would have still tried to be one even if I didn't have this quirk. You smile at his response. So, what was your reason for being a hero as a kid? Before people started criticizing your quirk, why did you want to become a hero? Shinsou just stares, wearing a confused expression. After a few seconds, realization dawns his features as he figures out where you're going with this. I wanted to help Piplito save them. I never really cared about being flashy and standing out. I just always admired how strong the heroes worked to save everyone. They never gave up until the bad guys were defeated. The purple-haired boy averts his embarrassed gaze as he starts rubbing the back of his neck. I wanted to be like that too. Beaming, you reach over to clap the boy strong on the shoulder, causing him to jolt in surprise. That's a wonderful reason, Shinsou. If you keep working strong like you've been doing, I think you can do it. You'll make a wonderful hero. I'm looking forward to seeing more of your bright future. His eyes widen at your words before he abruptly looks away. Despite his best efforts to hide his face with his hand, you can see the tips of his ears turn red, making you laugh. Looks like you have a cute side after all, Shinsou. When the GD student makes a choked noise, you pull your hand away in an attempt to give him some space. As he tries to calm down, you decide there's something else you want to tell Shinsou. Hey, Shinsou? Could you do me a favor? What is it? A grin forms on your face when you see him give you a suspicious look. It's nothing bad, I promise. I just want you to take a close look at your opponent when you're fighting at the sports festival. At his confused look, you continue. You mentioned during the fight how easy people with heroic quirks have it compared to people with quirks like yours. I won't deny that there is some truth to those words, but your opponent isn't like that at all. You remember all the visions you had of Midoriya's childhood, and all the struggles he overcame to get to where he is now. They know what it's like to be bullied, to have someone ridicule their dream. Their quirk developed late, so they went through a lot of pain up until that point. They worked really strong to get to where they are now. For several seconds, Shinsou just stares, obviously surprised by your words, but then, he releases a deep sigh. So, basically, you're saying I end up becoming a hypocrite by judging someone else based off their quirk before getting to know them. Nice. Good going, me. Shrugging, you finish off the last rice. In your defense, it's not like you have the opportunity to chat and get to know each other while you're competing. I do think that's a good idea, though. They'd be an awesome friend to have. They'd love your quirk and probably come up with 100 different ways for you to use it that not even you have thought of yet. He raises an eyebrow at you. You can't be serious. You grin broadly as you nod. I am 100% serious. They are amazing at analyzing quirks and are very good at finding ways that every quirk can be used for heroics. I'm not kidding when I say they would readily encourage everyone to become a hero, no matter what their quirk was. It's obvious he's having a difficult time believing you. Considering his past, you can't really blame him. If you ever want to meet them, just let me know, and I'll introduce you. I promise you won't regret it. You want me to become friends with the person I'm gonna fight at the sports festival? Seriously? Shinsou asks. His deadpan expression makes you laugh. Hey, nothing's wrong with having a friendly rival. Besides, as long as you both promise to not go easy on each other, then I don't see the problem. Shinsou pinches the bridge of his nose. I can think of several problems. The main one being they'll find out about my quirk, so I'll lose my advantage during the fight. You wince at his words. Hate to break it to you, buddy, but they already know about it going into the fight. I don't know how, but I could tell at the beginning of the fight that they knew not to answer you. Of course, you didn't let that stop you. A smirk forms on his lips. I'm told I'm an amazing conversationalist. The smirk fades when he sighs. I'm not really interested in making friends, but I'll think about it. That's when you hear the bell ring, signaling the end of lunch. As you gather your stuff together, Shinsou rises to his feet. You're surprised when bows his head. Thanks for the meal. Grinning, you decide to take advantage of his position by reaching to ruffle his hair after you stand. You laugh at his scowl. Your hair is already messy. It's not like it can get any worse. He huffs as he runs a hand through his hair. Can't really argue with that. As the two of you walk back together to the building, you wonder if you'll get another opportunity to talk to the GD student. There aren't really any reasons you can think of that could lead to you two hanging out again. Still, you can't help but find yourself really interested in his future. Much like how you feel about your current students, you really want to somehow invest some time into Shinsou's future as well. Unlike Class 1A, he doesn't really have anyone to encourage his pursuit of becoming a hero. That's why you can't help but wish there was something you could do for him, since every kid deserves a person who supports their dream. No kid should be in the same kind of situation Midoriya was in for the majority of his childhood. It's at that moment another really crazy idea comes to mind. You immediately dismiss it at first since you think you'd be crossing a line if you brought it up. But at the same time, it's the only thing you can think of that might help the boy. Just as you're about to part ways with Shinsou, you decide to throw caution to the wind and ask, Hey, Shinsou, what kind of training do you plan on doing for the sports festival? At his raised eyebrow, you grin. Relax. I don't plan on sharing your training secrets or anything. I was just wondering if you'd like a workout buddy. The purple-haired student freezes, his eyes the largest you've ever seen them. You're not suggesting nodding. You jab a thumb at yourself. I was thinking I should do a little training myself. Staying physically fit is important, and I want to be a good example for my students. I think it'd be nice to have someone else to train with me. Shinsou clenches his fists at his sides as he frowns. Why are you doing this? Being so nice to me. Wouldn't you rather ask one of your own students instead? You scratch your head. It's strong to explain, but because of my quirk, I'm always thinking about people's futures. When I see someone amazing, I can't help but wonder what their future will be like, since I don't get visions for everyone I see. In your case, a warm smile forms on your lips. I want to invest in your future. I think you're going to do a lot of great things and become an amazing hero, Shinsou. I just want to be one of the people who helps you get there. At his dumbfounded expression, your smile turns sheepish. Sorry, that kinda sounds selfish, but after spending so long just watching and not interfering, I want to actually get involved and be a part of molding the future. Just like how I want to protect my students' futures, I want to do the same for yours. You have just as much a right as they do after all. I know I'm not much, but if there's anything I can do to help you, I want to. For several seconds, he remains silent. Then, his expression relaxes as he grins. So, you're a busybody then? A laugh escapes you before you can even try to stop it. Well, you're not wrong. I can't really deny it. Shinsou tilts his head as he studies you for a moment. Eventually, he pulls out his cell phone, which has a purple case with a black pad on the back. If we're going to be training together, I'll need a way to contact you. Beaming, you pull out the new cell phone Aizawa got you. You watch with amusement as the student's eyes zero in on your phone case. After a few seconds, he simply nods. Yeah, this is good. With that, the two of you exchange numbers. After you both finish, Shinsou takes off down the hall, so he won't be late for class. Technically, you should scold him for running in the hallway since you're a teacher, but considering it's your fault he's late, you decide not to worry about it. Thankfully, after the two of you part ways, you manage to find the teacher's lounge without getting lost. When you see a familiar yellow caterpillar on the couch, you realize that Aizawa slept through lunch. You were afraid this would happen. Ignoring the other teachers, you approach the underground hero and start shaking his shoulder. Aizawa-san, you slept through lunch, didn't you? That's not healthy. I made you a bento and everything. Don't waste all my strong work. He starts groaning, obviously displeased with being woken up. You're too loud. You've been hanging around Mike too much. Hey, I'm an amazing influence unlike you. Present Mike retorts, "How dare you waste a homemade lunch made by your cute Ta, you villain!" Much to your surprise, several of the teachers present cheer in agreement, including Midnight, who pulls out her WHP as she LCKs her lips. "Hey, would you like me to deliver some punishment? It's the best way to handle men like Aizawa, or they'll never learn." Scowling, Aizawa rises from his seat, still completely wrapped up in his sleeping bag. "I stand corrected. You and Mike both are horrible influences on her." When the two addressed heroes begin to loudly complain, the grumpy teacher gets out of his sleeping bag and heads for his desk. You watch closely as he opens a drawer and pulls out the lunch you made him. He takes a bite out of one of the rices you made before raising an eyebrow at you. "Happy now?" Beaming, you clap your hands together excitedly. "Delighted, thank you. Let me know if you have any problems with the taste." Vlad King starts laughing. "Rather than a Ta, it's like Eraser has gotten another mother." One of the other heroes, whom you recognize as Ectoplasm, chuckles at the comment. "So it would seem." Aizawa proceeds to glare at everyone since they're either laughing or nodding in agreement. His ire only increases when present Mike and Midnight start pestering him about sharing his food with them, which he refuses to do. That's what leads you to interfering, since it looks like he's seconds away from trying to maim them both. Thankfully, with a promise of you bringing food to share tomorrow, the two calm down and head back to their desks. Taking a seat beside Aizawa, you spend the rest of the PRD looking through your phone and familiarizing yourself with it. Between that and the occasional paperwork thrown your way, the afternoon passes pretty uneventfully, making you wonder if this is how the rest of your day will pass. You eventually find out that that's not the case during the last PRD of the day, which really shouldn't be a surprise. After all, things are rarely uneventful when Class 1A is concerned, and something tells you that won't ever change. Much to your surprise, instead of teaching, Aizawa decides to make the last hour of school a study PRD. After making that declaration, he quickly wraps himself up in his sleeping bag, while the students start reading or working on their homework. Since you currently have nothing to do, you let your gaze roam across the classroom and absent-mindedly study the students' expressions. It's when your eyes eventually fall on Kaminari that you pause. For some reason, he's just blankly staring at his desk, looking as if he has already given up, even though he probably hasn't been working for more than 10 minutes. That's when you remember seeing his academic ranking from middle school on his profile. Apparently, academics are not his strong point. That's when you get an idea. What if you offered to help him with his homework? You wouldn't just give him the answers, of course, but you could offer to walk him through the process. Maybe you could find out what exactly is troubling him. Thinking it won't hurt to try, you quietly rise from your seat and make your way to Kaminari's desk. Both Shaoji and Ojiro raise their heads from their work to give you curious looks, and so does Jiru when you come to a stop in the space between her and Kaminari's desks. Your response is to grin and place a finger against your lips. Their gazes are still on you when you crouch down by Kaminari, who is so zoned out that he hasn't even noticed your arrival, and whisper, "Hey, Kaminari, what's wrong?" He jumps in his seat before giving you a witty-eyed look. "Holy shit, you scared the CRP out of me." A few of his classmates snicker quietly at his remark while you give him an amused look. "Sorry about that. Are you all right?" The blonde grins as he rubs the back of his neck. "Oh yeah, I'm cool." "So, did you need me for something, Sensei?" You shake your head. "It's the opposite, actually. I was wondering if you wanted any help with your homework." His eyes grow as large as saucers. Seriously, fighting back the urge to laugh at his expression, you give him a nod. "Yup. I can't do much on the hero side of things, but if you're having problems with any of your regular academic subjects, I'll be happy to lend a hand." You start to panic when tears suddenly start streaming down his face. "Kaminari, are you okay?" He immediately starts scrubbing his face clean before giving you a pleading look. "Please help me. Please." A sigh of relief escapes you when you realize nothing's wrong. Soon after, you take a look at the papers on his desk and realize he's trying to do his math homework. By the looks of it, it's just simple algebra, but he's obviously struggling. "I'll take you through the problem step-by-step, okay?" You remark, "Feel free to stop me at any time if you have a question, and you can tell me to repeat myself if you miss something I say." Kaminari looks at you like you're the person who just saved his life. Considering the situation, he probably feels that way. "Yes, ma'am, so that's how you tackle every problem." You explain the process, how to work the formula, and correct him whenever he makes a mistake, which, unfortunately for Kaminari, is quite often. Still, he doesn't give up. Once he realizes you won't get mad at him for asking, the blonde keeps peppering you with questions. Unbeknownst to you, Kaminari isn't the only student listening to your tutoring. Several students, including Ashido, Kirishima, and Siro, who are all sitting nearby, are paying extremely close attention to your explanations. Thankfully, by the time the last bell of the day rings, you manage to get Kaminari through all of his math homework. Once he realizes he's actually done, the blonde stares at the homework in amazement. I did it. With a big grin, he pumps his fist into the air. I did it, yes, go, me, giggling. You reach into your backpack and pull out a Pikachu sticker which you place on his hand. Good job, Kaminari. I knew you could do it. And now, he looks like he's about to cry again. Sensei, thank you so much. You made it so much easier to understand. You're like some kind of math goddess. You then pull out a sucker and hand it to him. You're welcome. Just don't cry. Aizawa-san is supposed to be the teacher that invokes tears from students, not me. His eyes widen with wonder. I get a sticker and a sucker. With a laugh, you rise from your crouched position. Yep. You worked really strong, so I think you deserve both. It's a special one-time service. Hey, what about me, sensei? Turning toward Ishido, you see her holding up her own completed math homework and pointing vigorously at it. I was paying attention too, and I finished all the problems. After you move over to her desk, you see that she's right. Everything is completed and appears to be right. Do you want both too? She beams at you excitedly. Yes, please. Amused, you pull out an alien sticker and place it on her hand, making her squeal with delight. You then pull out a pixie stick and give it to her. Good job, Ishido. I didn't realize other students would be listening to me, but if my explanations were helpful, I'm glad. You're surprised when Ishido stands up and hugs you. Thank you, sensei. Whenever I need help, can I come ask you questions about homework? Smiling, you gently pat her on the back. Of course, you can. You can always come to me for help. Her smile grows at your words. After quickly releasing you, she pumps her fist into the air and cheers excitedly. Soon after, Ishido starts happily eating her candy, proving she has no interest in saving it for later, much to your amusement. When you hear sniffling, you turn to see Kirishima, watching you with teary eyes. That's just so manly. You're so cool, sensei. The comment puzzles you, making you wonder what you should say in response. Jiru, who's on her way out of the classroom, notices this and rolls her eyes. Kirishima, you can't just call a girl manly, especially not a teacher. Look at her. She doesn't know how to react. His eyes grow large. Sorry, sensei. I didn't mean it in a bad way, I swear. I just thought you were really cool helping Kaminari and Ishido like that. He rubs the back of his neck sheepishly. Your explanations were also really helpful to me too. So, thanks. Zero gives you a thumbs up as he gathers his stuff together. Same here, thanks a lot. That's when Dark Shadow makes an appearance. Fumikage was paying close attention too. He hates math, but your explanation actually seemed to help him understand it better. So, thanks, Takoyami sighs as he adjusts his book bag on his back. The world of numbers is dark and inexplicable. Whoever enters it cannot tread lightly, or they will be forever lost in its maddening labyrinth. Translation: Math sucks. Dark Shadow remarks. The avian-featured student nods his head. Indeed. Dark Shadow catches you by surprise when he approaches you rather than disappear into Takoyami's CHC. Hey, is that candy just for students? Or is it for everyone? His vessel gives him an exasperated look. You don't even need to eat. The shadow creature shrugs. Doesn't mean I can't enjoy the taste. I like candy, amused. You give him a curious look. What kind of candy do you like? Dark Shadow grins as he moves to D himself across your shoulders. I like all kinds, but I really like Twizzlers. So does Fumikage. He also loves apple-flavored candy. He crows in delight when you pull some Twizzlers out and give them to him. I love you, you're the best. Your gaze falls on Takoyami's obviously embarrassed form. Never thought I'd have a Quirk declare his love for me. That's a new one. Super adorable, I gotta admit. The student bows his head. I apologize. He can be overly affectionate at times. I will have another talk with him. Grinning, you move to clap him on the shoulder while the other hand offers him some Twizzlers. Don't worry about it. Thanks to him, I know what candy you like now. Here's your reward for paying such close attention to my lesson. Takoyami hesitantly accepts the treat, giving you a small nod. Thank you. That's when you notice Kirishima's and Siro's expectant expressions. Behind them, Kaminari and Ishido are showing each other the stickers they received. You're surprised the two boys were willing to stay behind just for some candy, considering most of the class has already left by now. Not wanting to disappoint them, you give Kirishima some rock candy, and upon realizing he likes orange-flavored candy, you hand Siro a sucker with that flavor. In addition to the candy, Kirishima gets a boulder sticker with the words, Rock On, while Siro gets a cool spider sticker. Takoyami also leaves with a sticker after Dark Shadow asks for one. The Quirk gets a shiny star sticker, while the student receives a black moon sticker, which is, according to him, as dark as my soul. Following after Kirishima's group, Takoyami exits the classroom with Dark Shadow, who's cackling at his vessel's sticker comment. After they leave, you turn toward Aizawa's desk and are surprised to see him still wrapped up in his sleeping bag. He shakes his head as he huffs. At this rate, you'll be out of stickers within a week. I can't believe you even bought candy. Seriously. You pout. They like it, so it's fine, isn't it? It's not hurting anyone. I won't be spoiling them if I give the rewards in small doses. I won't go overboard. Aizawa rolls his eyes as he pulls himself out of his sleeping bag and rises to his feet. Whatever. Let's go. I'm tired. The corners of your lips pull upward. You're always tired, Aizawa-san. Demonstrate I am. Aizawa retorts, everything is exhausting. You'll realize that soon enough. Somehow, you doubt you'll ever reach his level of exhaustion, but of course, this is only your second day. Your excitement will probably eventually wane further into the semester, but for now, you're going to make the most of it. You're looking forward to seeing what the future holds. It's during your third day at UA that you get to witness the students of Class 1 doing training exercises in their hero costumes. They were all split off into pairs and were instructed to spar with their partners. This is your first time watching them use their quirks for fighting, at least in person anyway, since you have had visions about their battles during the SG attack. While you enjoy seeing the students in action, there is something that has been bothering you for a while now. Even though you've been doing your best to look at all of your students, you find your gaze often returning to Yaoyorozu and Hagakure. Of course, you can't actually see the invisible girl, but you know she's paired up with Shaoji because you can see a floating pair of gloves along with a set of moving boots. The reason you keep looking at those two girls in particular is because of their costumes, or in Hagakure's case, lack of costume. Now, you understand why Yaoyorozu needs a costume that reveals her skin since it's related to her quirk, but you can't fathom why the costume has to look like that. Sure, it makes sense for her CH-SIN area to be easily accessible since there are more lipids there as compared to other parts of her body, but who the hell thought it was okay for a hero in training to wear a top that doesn't have proper support for her CH-SIN? How the hell is she supposed to run and fight properly, wearing a top like that? Not only that, the dark-haired girl has to fight in a skirt, of all things, which can't be easy to do despite how short it is. The support department could have at least given her some shorts to wear underneath the skirt. That way she wouldn't have to worry about perverts like Mainta, who you catch at one point looking at Yaoyorozu's rear when she bends over to pick up something that one of her classmates had dropped when the students are all taking a brief break. Naturally, you make sure Mainta knows how much you do not appreciate his oogling via a sharp, unimpressed glare, which ensures that he doesn't look at Yaoyorozu for the rest of the PRD. What especially boggles your mind is the fact that one of your visions of the Yosti attack proved that in order for Yaoyorozu to make large items she has to tear her costume and remake it afterwards. Why in the world would she willingly wear a costume that essentially hinders the usage of her quirk? Why not just wear one that allows her to create items of all sizes that won't involve sacrificing the costume in the process? It just doesn't make sense. Hagakure is another problem entirely. The poor girl is fighting naked. What the hell? Was the support department seriously unable to come up with anything besides giving her gloves and boots? Surely, there are other options available. There has to be. What the hell is she supposed to do when she has to fight during the winter season? You find yourself unable to stop thinking about those two costumes the rest of the PRD. That's why when you and Aizawa are walking back together to the teacher's lounge you decide to bring up your worries. He responds with a sigh. That's not up to me. If you have a complaint, take it up with the support department. But remember, in the end, it's up to Yaoyorozu and Hagakure what kind of costumes they wear. Scowling, you pinch the bridge of your nose. I know. It's not like I can force them to change their costumes if they really like them, but it just doesn't seem practical. No 15-year-old girl should have to fight naked or fight with a costume that essentially hinders the usage of her quirk. Aizawa shrugs his shoulders. I won't argue since your argument is logical. Still, it's not up to you or me. That's all on them. Thinking that's the end of that particular conversation, you are surprised when about an hour later Aizawa drops a set of files in front of you. When you look up at him, he smirks. Those are files for the third years which include details about their costumes. I think you'll enjoy reading about them. With that, the older man climbs into his sleeping bag and passes out within seconds of closing his eyes. Shaking your head at what's becoming a very familiar sight, you start perusing through the files he gave you, wondering what exactly he wanted you to see. Almost an entire hour passes like this, and you still have no idea why Aizawa brought you these files. Just when you feel like giving up, your eyes drift across the costume made for the student at the bottom of the pile. Tagada Mirio. Your eyes widen in recognition. This is the student that was in line for inheriting Ofa before All Might met Midoriya. I've never seen him before, but I recognize his name since it got mentioned in a few of my past visions. Since it's been a while since his name last got brought up in a vision, you had honestly forgotten about him and the fact that he's currently attending UA. That's why you're caught by surprise when you see his file. Your surprise only grows when you finally get around to reading the file. According to his profile, Tagata has a quirk called permeation which allows him to become intangible. A special costume had to be made using his DNA in order to create a costume that would turn intangible along with his body. Otherwise, he'd be fighting naked like how Hagakure does now. Your jaw drops. Are you freaking kidding me? Why the hell haven't they done this for Hagakure? Surely, if they can make a costume that turns intangible, they can make one that turns invisible. Deciding the only thing you can do is ask. You make your way to the support studio on the first floor. From what you've heard, the teacher in charge of the support department, Power Loader, is often in there, so that's likely where you'll find the pro hero. Thankfully, you manage to find the right room without much difficulty. Just as you open the door to enter, a large cloud of smoke pours out of the room, making you cough when you inhale some of it. Oops, looks like I made a little mistake. Damn it, Hatsume, that's why I said to be more careful. When the smoke finally clears, you see Power Loader scolding a female student with pink hair. When she pulls up her goggles, you notice how her pupils appear like the crosshairs you'd see in a scope. It's at that moment the two finally realize they have an audience. Power Loader turns to look at you. You erase your head's Nuta, right? You nod your head. That's me. I was hoping, if you weren't busy, that I could ask you a quick question about one of my students' costumes. Hatsume's face brightens as she focuses her excited gaze on you. Could it be? A costume redesign? And that's when a vision hits you. In a blink, the scenery before you changes to the familiar setting of the stadium used for US Sports Festival. This time, the focus of the vision is Hatsume. It appears that the students are all in some kind of race. Hatsume is wearing a lot of gear, which you assume she built, and is using the inventions to cross over a large canyon. You're surprised when, a few seconds later, the scenery suddenly changes to that of the arena from yesterday's vision where Midoriya and Shinsou fought. The fight you see is definitely not what you were expecting. Poor Ida ends up getting tricked by the girl, so she can make use of the fight to advertise all of her inventions. Even though you do feel bad for your student, you gotta give Hatsume props for making the most of the moment. When your vision ends, you're surprised to see Hatsume standing incredibly close to you, intensely studying your face. Interesting. It must be inconvenient for your quirk to activate so randomly like that. Maybe I can create a new baby that can help you. While a part of you feels like you should be worried by that large grin of hers, you can't stop yourself from smiling at the girl. You are a very interesting girl, Hatsume. I'm used to seeing a lot of strange things when I get visions, but seeing your future actually managed to catch me by surprise. I gotta say, I admire your tenacity. Those babies of yours are very impressive. She beams at you as she grabs your arms. You saw my babies in action. What kind of future did you see for them? Weren't they amazing? Did everyone love them as much as they should? Power Loader sighs as he shakes his head. Calm down, Hatsume. You're gonna overwhelm her. What have I told you about getting into people's personal space like that? Amused by her excitement, you chuckle. I saw you showcasing them at the sports festival. They were all super cool. You have an incredible mind. Her eyes are practically sparkling now. The sports festival, so I'll get to show off my babies then. I need to get back to work, so I'll be ready in time. With that, she releases you and returns to her workstation. You have no idea what she's working on, but no doubt it'll be amazing, considering what you saw in your most recent vision. So, you said you had a question for me, averting your gaze away from Hatsume. You see Power Loader watching you. Yes, I wanted to ask about my student's costume. Hagakure Toru's quirk allows her to always be invisible, but it doesn't normally affect the clothing she wears. That's why her current costume doesn't involve much clothing, which honestly makes no sense to me since that means she has no armor whatsoever if she does happen to actually get hit. You cross your arms. I know about Tagata Mirio's costume. Because it was made using his DNA, it can turn intangible along with him when he uses his quirk. I wanted to know if something similar was possible for Hagakure. The pro hero thoughtfully rubs his chin as he considers your words. Theoretically, it should be possible. We'd have to take a sample of her DNA and let the design company do a few tests. I think it's likely something could be done. That's all you need to know. All that's left to do now is talk to the invisible girl herself. Great, I'll talk with Hagakure to see what she'd like to do. If she's interested, I'll bring her by here after classes end for the day. Thank you for your help, Power Loaderson. Power Loader catches you off guard when he starts snickering. Before you can question his strange reaction, he gives you an amused grin. I heard from the other teachers that you were a mother hen. Looks like they were right. Going through all this trouble, and you haven't even asked the kid yet. A pout forms on your lips at his comment, but you can't really argue since it's true you're going through all this trouble without even talking to your student first. You just wanted to see if the costume was possible first since you didn't want to risk getting her hopes up in the case that nothing could be done. You hope she won't be offended when you try to suggest a new costume. If she refuses, you'll just have to admit defeat. After all, it's her right to choose what she wears or doesn't wear. That's when Hatsume crashes into you from behind, nearly knocking you over. Hey, fortune tellerson, can you tell me which of my babies will be the biggest hit with the audience? Or, better yet, which ones that won't do well? I can use this time to improve them, so they'll be even more amazing. Power Loader sighs wearily. Hatsume, I just told you to stop doing stuff like that. Be more respectful. Even though she doesn't look that much older than you, she is working as a tahir, so you must treat her with the same respect as you would the other teachers. The pink-haired student finally pulls away from you, now wearing a curious expression. I didn't know we had Taz here. You're the only one I've ever heard of. I don't recognize your face. Are you a hero? You shake your head as you grin sheepishly. I'm not. I was given this position because of my quirk. I can't really go into details, but I've had several visions pertaining to UA, so they decided it would be best to keep me on staff, just in case. Hatsume sighs in disappointment. And here I was hoping you'd be a hero who would be interested in trying out my babies. For some reason, she suddenly pauses, and her eyes widen as if having a great epiphany. Then, a large grin forms on her face. While my current babies might not be useful for you, that doesn't mean I can't make some that will be. Her words catch you off guard. Wait. Why would you want to make me something? All I do is grade papers and other desk work. Your inventions are amazing, but I have no idea why you'd want to make anything related to the work I do. The other girl's grin just grows. Because you're always around heroes. If your students see you with my babies, that'll bring me more publicity. With this, they'll know about me even before the sports festival. All you can do is stare. You're suddenly reminded of the vision entailing her fight with Ida. She plans on making use of you just like how she will do with him. However, rather than feel annoyed, you find yourself growing more and more amused by Hatsume. You definitely admire her determination. That's when an idea comes to mind that makes you grin. Hey, Hatsume, would you be willing to give some suggestions on what you'd think would be good for an invisible hero's costume? Her eyes sparkle with excitement. Of course, your grin grows. I get the feeling this is the beginning of something great. Looks like I've found another future I'm interested in seeing more of. After the final bell rings and the students begin to make their way home, you wave at Hagakure to get her attention. Hey, Hagakure, could you stay for a few minutes? I was hoping I could ask you about something. The invisible student immediately walks over to stand across the desk from you. Sure, sensei, what did you want to ask me? Aizawa, who obviously knows what's about to happen, heads out the door. More than likely, he's going to the teacher's lounge to sleep until you finish up here. Rather than beat around the bush, you decide to directly bring up what's been bothering you. Today was the first time I saw you in your hero costume. I gotta admit it caught me off guard. Although you can't see her hands, considering how close together the sleeves of her uniform are, it looks like she might be twiddling her fingers now. That must have been a huge surprise, huh? It's kinda embarrassing, I know, but it's the best way to make use of my quirk. I need to be stealthy, and the only way I can do that is by only wearing clothing I can easily take off. Now, it's time for you to reveal what you learned earlier today. What if it was possible to have a costume made that could turn invisible once you put it on? Would you be willing to try it out? The sudden smacking of her hands on the desk makes you jump in surprise. Even though you can't see her face, judging from her posture, it appears that she's leaning towards you now. That's possible, really. Chuckling, you nod. There's a third year whose costume was made out of his DNA, so that it would react to his quirk. In his case, the costume turns intangible along with his body, so that he doesn't have to fight naked. I talked with Power Loader, and he said it was possible for a costume like that to be made for you. They'd need to do some tests to be sure, though. Hagakure flings her arms into the air with a cheer. That's amazing. I would love that. Maybe now I can even get some cool armor. Getting a punch straight to your bare stomach really sucks. Wincing at her comment, you move to stand and join her on the other side of the desk. I bet it does. If everything works out with making you a special hero costume, then we can see about it getting some type of padding or armor to protect you on the chance that someone ever lands a lucky hit on you. When she raises an arm to most likely pump her fist in excitement, you smile. You ready to make a quick trip to the support studio? DNA-wise, they used hair for the other student, so if you give them a strand of yours, I think that's all they'll really need. The invisible student surprises you when she loops her arm with yours. I'm ready when you are, sensei. Lead the way. Your smile grows at her actions. With your arm linked with hers, you lead her to the lab and find Power Loader waiting for you. Unsurprisingly, he's not the only person there. After he secures some of Hagakure's hair in a test tube to transport it to the design company, Hatsume pounces on you and your student. The young inventor proceeds to go over all the ideas she's come up with for the new costume. Thankfully, rather than get overwhelmed, Hagakure gets excited by all the suggestions and is quick to throw out ideas of her own. After the two students finish chatting, the invisible girl leaves for home after thanking you for your help. Despite being unable to see it, you could practically feel her smile aimed your way. It looks like your worries about offending her over the costume suggestion were unfounded after all. After Hagakure leaves, you thank Power Loader and Hatsume for all their help before meeting up with Aizawa at the teacher's lounge, so the two of you can leave for the day. During the train ride home, you get a text message from Shinsou, asking if you had the authority to let him use the school fitness center after school hours. Since you're not sure if you can, you decide to ask Aizawa. Hey, Aizawa-san, I know I probably don't have the same kind of authority as the rest of the staff members, but I was wondering if I'm able to grant permission so a student can use the fitness center after school hours. Would it be fine as long as I was there with him? He raises an eyebrow at you. My first impulse is to say no, but I'll have to ask the principal to be sure. Who's the student? You grin sheepishly. A general education course student I got to know yesterday. I had a vision about him in the sports festival. He did really well, and I kinda took an interest in him. I offered to train with him, so he just texted me asking about the school fitness center. His eyebrow rises higher when you mention which course Shinsou is in. So, he's in general education. Let me guess, he plans on using the sports festival as a means to enter the heroics course. Nodding, you give him a thumbs up. Yep. Shinsou has an incredible quirk, but it's useless against robots, so that's why he ended up in his current course. He really wants to be a hero, though, and I think he can do it. I want to support him any way I can, so he can achieve his dream. Aizawa pulls out his eye drops and starts putting some in his eyes. Is there a particular reason you're interested in this kid? Or is it just because you had a vision about him? You shrug. I guess. I mean, that's what made me want to try talking to him. But after spending some time with him, I found myself growing more and more interested in his future. Even though the vision involved him battling Midoriya, I don't think I got the vision just because Midoriya was in it. I feel like Shinsou will become someone important down the line. So, I just want to do whatever I can to help him. Averting your eyes, you start to nervously play with your fingers. I know I'm being a busybody. Just because I have these visions doesn't give me the right to intrude upon these people's lives. That's not my intention. I just want to help, that's all. I just want to be useful. All my life, I've accomplished nothing noteworthy. I've just been existing, but now, I can actually do something. I can help the students who will be responsible for molding the future of this world. I want to support these amazing kids who will probably one day change the world. A tired sigh pulls you out of your thoughts, drawing your attention to Aizawa. He quietly studies you for a few seconds before closing his eyes. Regular staff members can give permission, but considering your circumstances, we'll have to check with the principal. However, I have a feeling he'll find this whole situation amusing, so he'll agree to let the two of you use the fitness center. As long as I stay behind at school just in case, it'll probably be fine. Your expression brightens. Just as you open your mouth to thank the older man, your quirk suddenly activates. This new vision only lasts for a few seconds, but you're able to catch a glimpse of Aizawa and Shinsou together. By the looks of it, they seem to be training. When the vision comes to an end and your sight returns to normal, you see Aizawa watching you. He narrows his eyes when you grin at him. What? You just shake your head in response. It looks like I'm not the only one who'll take an interest in Shinsou. I'm glad. Be sure to keep a close eye on him during the sports festival, okay? I promise you won't regret it. A part of you is tempted to just ask Aizawa about training the GD student, but somehow, you get the feeling things aren't supposed to go like that. Knowing him, the older man will need to witness Shinsou's potential firsthand before he decides on offering his help to the boy. The sports festival is the perfect opportunity for that. While you normally would reveal such a vision since you doubt your quirk would stop you over such a small thing, you decide not to tell Aizawa or Shinsou what you saw. Rather than force it, you'd like to see how this naturally plays out. Your students aren't the only ones that need to learn about using their quirks. You need to be able to draw the line between times when you should and shouldn't meddle. Considering how much of your life you've been doing the latter, you have been doing a lot of the former since arriving at UA. This particular future will occur even without your assistance, so for now, you're content to sit back and wait to see just how it'll happen. You're excited to see what amazing things Shinsou will do to get the stern teacher's attention. Until then, you'll make the most of your time with the GD student. Right now, the thing he needs most is support Somyeon, who believes in him and thinks he can accomplish his dream. While you can't provide much for Shinsou, you can definitely do that. After everything went so smoothly with Hagakure, you decide to pull Yaoyorozu aside the following day on her way to lunch. When you ask her about her costume, the girl bashfully replies, "I understand it may seem a little unorthodox, but I promise you it is very much necessary for me to make the best use of my quirk." You tilt your head curiously. I get there are a lot of lipids in the CH scent area, but why did you focus on just your CH scent when there are other parts of your body that also have the fat you could use for your quirk? She grabs her chin as her expression turns thoughtful. I actually did consider that as well. I originally wanted my outfit to bear even more of my skin, but it wasn't allowed due to restrictions on how much skin a hero is allowed to show. So, there are restrictions. Could have fooled me. You wryly think to yourself. Sighing, you run a hand through your hair. I'm not trying to criticize you for your costume since I do understand why it's like that. I just think it's kinda impractical how it doesn't provide proper CH scent support, and how you have to tear it and make a new one whenever you create large items. Those limitations would definitely make a drawn-out battle difficult for you. Yaoyorozu frowns. Yes, I suppose you're right. At the time when I designed my hero costume, I had thought that it would be no issue for me to make myself a new costume if I should ever need to tear it. But it's true that there will be situations where I will not have the luxury of having enough time to create a new costume, especially if I have used my quirk extensively up until that point. Her voice grows quiet as she leans closer to you. I also underestimated just how difficult moving around without any kind of CH scent support is. While the discomfort I feel is tolerable when I am wearing my costume for school-related purposes, I imagine that that will not be the case in the future when I have to wear my costume for prolonged periods of time. You wince. Yeah, I can't imagine how awful it would feel to have to run around and fight without any kind of CH scent support for an extended PRD of time. While Yaoyorozu nods along with your words, you recall what happened yesterday with Minta and say, I also think you should consider adding shorts to your hero costume since I caught Minta looking up your skirt yesterday, and I'd hate for him to try to pull the same stunt in future training sessions. When surprise dawns her features, you quickly add, Don't worry, I gave him a glare that quickly set him straight. I didn't see him looking at you for the rest of the PRD. And after the PRD ended, I told him not to do that again, but... You sigh, I'm not too confident that he'll heed my warning. She bows her head. Thank you for doing that, sensei. I greatly appreciate your efforts. After saying that, she lifts her head and frowns. I also greatly dislike the idea of Mintasen committing more of those disturbing misdeeds, so I agree that it would be in my best interest to make some alterations to my current hero costume. You reach out to place a supportive hand on her shoulder. Why don't we take some time one day to just go over some ideas? Knowing you, I bet you've already come up with dozens of great different costume ideas. I could just be your soundboard since it always helps to have someone to hear you out. A light blush dusts her cheeks at your compliment as she clasps her hands together excitedly. I think I would very much like that. Thank you, sensei. The smile she gives you makes you feel like you've just won the Nobel Prize. Nothing can compare to the feeling of bringing a smile to a student's face. With a gentle squeeze to her shoulder, you return her smile. You're very welcome, Yaoyorozu. I'm still learning about when I should and shouldn't meddle, but I can't bring myself to feel guilty about getting involved in this. You think to yourself, this was definitely the right decision. If I'm able to make my students smile like this with my actions, then I know I've done something right. Your smile grows. Hopefully, as I continue to grow as a teacher, I'll get to see more of those wonderful smiles. After all, what could be better than that? After your conversation with Yaoyorozu ends with the two of you exchanging numbers so she can contact you about her costume ideas, you both part ways, and the rest of your afternoon passes pretty uneventfully, with you mostly taking care of whatever paperwork Aizawa sends your way. Because you didn't do anything particularly exciting this afternoon, you're pretty pumped about meeting up with Shinsou after the final school bell rings. When you told Nedzu about Shinsou's request to use the school's fitness center, he was absolutely delighted at the prospect of a general department student going to such lengths to train, just as Aizawa predicted. The principal claimed it was the UA faculty's duty to foster that potential and help it grow. So, as long as Aizawa remains on the premises, there's no problem with you and Shinsou using the fitness center after school. After Nedzu brought up Aizawa needing to stay at UA with you and Shinsou, you were reminded of his other job outside of teaching, so after that meeting with the principal concluded, You found yourself asking Aizawa about his job as an underground hero. As far as you know, he hasn't gone to work since taking on the role as your overseer, so you began to worry that you were getting in the way of his work. Thankfully, your worries were unfounded since, according to him, he doesn't do much hero work during the first week of school because his teacher duties always keep him preoccupied. When you questioned him about the following weeks, Aizawa told you that, once everything was settled with the SJ, he'd go back to doing hero work after school. So, until then, he's taking a little break and focusing solely on his teaching responsibilities. You were very relieved to hear that since that meant you're not currently interfering with his work as an underground hero. You already felt bad about the living situation he was forced into, so you'd hate if you hampered his hero work as well. On the bright side, since he currently doesn't have any responsibilities after school lets out, Aizawa doesn't have any qualms about staying late at school while you train with Shinsou. According to him, as long as he gets to sleep, he doesn't really care where he is. So, after the final bell rings and all your students exit the classroom, Aizawa head for the teacher's lounge to take a nap while you drop by the closest bathroom, so you can get changed into the gym clothes you packed in your bag. By the time you eventually reach the fitness center, Shinsou is already there, waiting in his gym uniform. Grinning, you enter the fitness center with the student following right behind you. Gotta admire that dedication. It only took you a day to ask me about coming here. You're making the most of your time, huh? Shinsou returns the grin as he shrugs his shoulders. I figured making the most of the resources I had available to me was the best choice. A gym membership costs money, and I can only do so much in the great outdoors. This seemed like the most logical course of action. At the word logical, the corners of your mouth curve higher. After that vision you had of Aizawa and Shinsou training together, you often find yourself discovering more and more similarities between the two. A laugh escapes you as the two of you start stretching. Makes sense to me. This really is the ideal place to be. It's free, and there's plenty of equipment to choose from. Plus, you get some great company. The purple-haired student snorts as he bends over to reach for his toes. Oh yeah, that's definitely the best part of this situation. The only reason I'm really here, to be honest. The physical LBR is just so we can have something to do while we chat. You smack his shoulder at the sarcasm. You're a really cheeky brat. Has anyone ever told you that? He smirks. Let's just say you weren't the first one to call me that, and you likely won't be the last. After the two of you finish loosening up, Shinsou tilts his head curiously in your direction. So, do you have any experience with this kind of thing? I know you said you weren't a hero, but have you ever gone through any physical training before? Surprisingly enough, you're able to find the answer to that question in your memories pretty quickly. Kinda. From what I can recall, I was basically homeschooled, and I believe I also did some physical exercises like you would for P. I mostly remember being put on a treadmill for hours at a time, so I'm confident that won't give me any issues. When you receive a strange look in return for your explanation, you realize that the boy has no idea about your background or your lack of one. Maybe you should explain your situation to him. After all, he has a right to know what kind of person he's hanging out with after school. Just as you think that, a concerning thought crosses your mind. I wonder if he'll still want to train with me after he finds out about my strange origins. You wouldn't blame him if he does change his mind about training with you, considering how suspicious you are, but you would still feel hurt by the rejection all the same. While that outcome is the last thing you want, you know you owe him an explanation, so that's exactly what you'll give him since it's only fair. After you gesture toward the treadmills, you both commandeer a machine and adjust the settings to your individual preferences. Once you start moving, you begin your explanation. A few days ago, I woke up in the school's infirmary. Apparently, they found me on the school grounds unconscious. I don't remember coming here to you, but I do recall wanting to visit so I could warn them. Warn them of what? Looking out of the corner of your eye, you see Shinsou giving you a side glance as he jogs. You carefully consider your response as you remember the awful drawback of your quirk. Villain attack. I wanted to warn them about what I saw, even though my quirk doesn't allow me to reveal the contents of my visions when they're about major events. He thoughtfully hums. The fact that you came here instead of just going to the police must mean the attack has something to do with UA, either the faculty or the students. It makes sense that they'd want to employ you if you keep having visions about something bad happening on campus. Impressed that he figured it out so quickly, you aim a smile in his direction. It's good you're so clever. Saves me having to explain things further. There's a slight red hue to his cheeks, now which you think is unrelated to the exercise he's currently doing. But you kindly decide not to bring attention to it. Instead, you move your gaze to stare ahead at the wall across from you. For whatever reason, in addition to not remembering how I got here, I can't remember a lot of things about myself. I don't know where I came from, or even my own age. I have no memories of interacting with people aside from clerks whenever I went shopping. My quirk isn't even in the DMN registry. When you chance a glance at the GD student, you see him staring at you with wide eyes and promptly avert your gaze. I haven't told any of my students about this since I'm afraid to. How would they react to having a teacher with such a shady background? No doubt it'd make them nervous, and I wouldn't blame them. I know I'm a suspicious person. But why are you telling me all this? His confusion is evident in his voice. The fact that you told him, of all people, about your suspicious background has obviously thrown him for a loop. All you can do is shrug. I just felt like you had the right to know. Unlike my other students, you're willingly spending time with me after school when you don't have to. I felt like you had the right to know what kind of person I am. I already know a little about you thanks to my quirk, so it only seemed fair that you know a little about me too. You find yourself unable to look in his direction as you continue. If my situation makes you uncomfortable, I'll understand if you'd rather I stay away from you from here on out. I won't ever bother you again. A loud snort has you turning your head in surprise to see Shinsou, who's trying very strong to contain his amusement. He raises an eyebrow when he notices your wide eyes. What? I just thought it was hilarious that you were trying to tell the kid who was called a villain all his life that you were possibly too dangerous to hang around with. I mean, seriously, no offense, but I'm pretty sure if we were to fight I would win even if I didn't use my quirk. Have you ever fought someone before? Blinking in shock, you take a few seconds to ponder that question before finally answering. I don't think so. I never really interacted with people, so there was never a need for me to fight someone. He nods his head as he wipes his sleeve across his sweaty forehead. Figured as much. While I don't want to be the a-hole who underestimates his opponent right from the start, I gotta say you probably wouldn't last very long in a fight unless that quirk of yours can be used in combat. Understanding the underlying question, you immediately shake your head. As far as I know, my quirk only allows me to receive random visions. I don't know how that could be applied to battle. Shinsou nods in understanding. So, to summarize, the likelihood of you being more dangerous than me is next to zero. Sure, you have no idea where you came from, and that is kinda suspicious, I admit. But that doesn't automatically mean you're a bad person. It just means you obviously went through something big for you to be missing so many of your memories. He holds your gaze. Honestly, there's just as much a chance that you're a victim in all this as there is of you being a criminal. From how I see it, I think you're being a little too strong on yourself. Several minutes pass in silence as you just gape at the purple-haired student, too stunned to come up with a response. Of all the things he could have said, you weren't expecting that. Thankfully, Shinsou doesn't appear to be waiting for an immediate reply since he quickly moves his gaze to stare ahead of him after he finishes speaking. So, you take your time composing yourself as you try to come up with a proper response. A burst of warmth floods your sin as you let his words take root in your mind and savor them. He's right. Your amnesia isn't indisputable proof of your guilt. There's just as much a chance that it's proof that something was actually done to you. It's at that moment you remember Aizawa mentioning the possibility of you encountering someone with a memory erasure quirk. Maybe something like that really did happen. When you finally turn to look at Shinsou, you see him city-eyeing you, most likely to see your reaction to his words since you've been quiet for so long. You give him a smile. Thank you, Shinsou. You're right. Just as there's no proof saying I'm innocent, there's no proof saying I'm definitely guilty either. Right now, I'm a mystery, and I'll just have to accept that. I'm sure eventually I'll figure everything out, but until then, I should try to avoid worrying so much about it. He nods. There's the phrase innocent until proven guilty. Until someone can actually prove you've done something bad, keep defending yourself. Don't give in and just accept whatever is thrown your way just because other people think you should. I learned a long time ago not to care about other people's opinions. The reminder of his past experiences with his former classmates makes you frown. They were wrong, Shinsou. Your quirk is amazing, and so are you. You'll be a great hero. A little grin forms on his lips as he looks away. Yeah, no matter what I'm told, I definitely will become a hero. I won't let anyone stop me. Your earlier smile returns. Your future is nothing but bright, Shinsou. I'm sure of it. You're even more convinced of that fact after this most recent conversation with Shinsou, because only a hero would be able to instill the kind of hope that he just did with you. That's why you'll do everything you can to support the younger boy. After all, it's only fair that you return the favor. After you and Shinsou spend about an hour on the treadmills, the two of you take a quick breather and rehydrate. Unfortunately, the principal only allotted a 2-hour time slot for training every day after school, so the two of you have already used up half of today's training time. While you hadn't originally intended on staying on the treadmill that long, you both kinda got distracted by your earlier conversation, so it really couldn't be helped. Once your little break ends, you decide to do some sit-ups while Shinsou picks up some dumbbells. After a few minutes pass like this, an idea comes to mind that makes you pause. Hey, Shinsou, were you planning on training your quirk too? Or are you just sticking with physical training? The GD student raises an eyebrow at you. Can't really practice with my quirk unless I have someone to use it on, so I'll probably just be working on physical training. You tilt your head. But you do have someone. If you want to practice with it, I don't mind volunteering. Shinsou is so surprised that he accidentally drops the dumbbell he was holding. You're serious. The corners of your lips tug upwards at his reaction. Yep, I trust you, Shinsou. I know you won't do anything to harm me, so if you want to practice on me, that's fine. It might even be a good way to practice dealing with people who already know about your quirk. Before he can respond, you school your features and narrow your eyes at him. But if you make me do something horrible like say I hate cats, I will not hesitate to punch you. Doing something so unforgivable cannot go unpunished. He puts a hand to his saint, pretending to look offended. I would never. I'd rather tell you to punch me than say something so vile. I wouldn't make my worst enemies say something like that. There's a brief pause, and then, you both burst out into laughing fits, neither of you able to maintain a serious front. The idea of Shinsou actually using his quirk to do something like that, of all the things he could do, is just too funny. After the two of you eventually calm down and catch your breath, the purple-haired boy gives you a considering look. If you're really okay with it, I wouldn't mind practicing a little with my quirk. While my physical strength is what needs the most work, I think it would be good to work with my quirk a little since I don't often get the opportunity to do that. You give him a thumbs up. I'm totally fine with it. I'm happy to help any way I can. A small smile forms on his face. Thanks, sensei. His words make you blink in surprise. That's the first time he's ever called you that. You weren't expecting it since you're technically not his teacher. Considering how casually he acts around you, you figured he'd address you similarly, but apparently, that's not the case. For some reason, hearing him call you that gives you a warm feeling in your CHC. You can't help but feel really happy about it. Anytime, Shinsou. And that's how the two of you end up spending the rest of your training time. After the first couple of tries, you start making it more difficult for him to brainwash you by not immediately responding. But as expected, Shinsou doesn't let that deter him. When it comes to making people talk, the GD student is very skilled. When time finally runs out, you both gather your bags and make your way out of the building. Rather than go find Aizawa right away, you walk with Shinsou to the entrance and wave him off as he departs. I had fun. See you Monday, Shinsou. Be sure to take it easy during your day off. I hear sleep is a wonderful thing. 10 out of 10 people recommend it. He rolls his eyes in response, but there's no hiding the small grin on his face. Sleep? All I've heard about it is that it's for the weak, so obviously, it's not for me. With a snort, you shake your head at his words. After he leaves, you make your way back inside and head for the teacher's lounge to find Aizawa. It's as you're walking that you think back to what you last said to Shinsou and find yourself wondering, now that I think about it, I wonder what I'm supposed to do tomorrow. Since there's no school on Sundays, you don't have to work tomorrow. No doubt Aizawa will sleep through most of the day, but what about you? What should you do? You scratch your head. I guess I'll just have to look for something to do at Aizawa-san's apartment to keep me preoccupied tomorrow since he's supposed to be watching over me, and I doubt he has any intention to leave his apartment on his day off. Fortunately, finding a way to entertain yourself tomorrow ends up being easier than you expected thanks to an unexpected guest. You, of course, are very happy about this. Aizawa, not so much. Just as you expected, when Sunday arrives, you find yourself with nothing to do except for watching TV since Aizawa is only interested in napping on the couch. Thankfully, you, at least, have Shiro to keep you company since Kuro seems more interested in napping with his owner. It's while you're playing with Shiro that you hear a loud knocking on the door. After getting a half-asleep Aizawa's approval, you move to answer it and are surprised to see Yamada, dressed in civilian attire, at the door, carrying what appears to be a blue gym bag. Hey, Unshin, I figured since you were with Shouta that meant you'd be stuck cooped up inside all Sunday, so I came by to provide some quality entertainment. You hear a loud groan from the couch. Damn it. Not you. Hurry and slam the door on him before he can get inside. Yamada quickly strides inside so that he can be within his friend's field of view when he makes an offended noise. You're awful, Shouta. I came all this way out of the goodness of my heart, and this is how you repay me? I feel so unloved. Amused, you walk over to him after closing the door and pat his back consolingly. Well, I'm definitely glad you're here, Yamada-san. I honestly had no idea what to do with myself before you arrived. He wraps his arms around you. See, Shouta, this is how friends treat one another. At least, she's happy to see me. Aizawa just rolls his eyes before turning so that he's facing the back of the couch. If you want to hang out with her, that's fine. Just leave me out of it so I can sleep. His friend pouts, obviously displeased that the underground hero has no interest in getting involved in the fun. To distract him, you point at the bag he just set down. What did you bring, Yamada-san? Immediately, a bright grin forms on his face. Something fun. Have you ever played a video game before, Unshin? When you shake your head, his grin grows. Well, you're about to. It's been a while since I last played since I'm usually busy, but I was able to find one of the older gaming consoles for a good price. I only bought 2 games, but I figured they'd be enough to keep us busy. With that, Yamada pulls out a gaming console and starts hooking it up to the TV while you curiously watch him. You can vaguely remember seeing that console on TV a while back, but you're pretty sure it came out over 10 years ago. You wonder if the last time he played it was when he was in high school. Once everything is situated, the blonde inserts one of the game discs and turns on the console. He takes a seat on the floor in front of the screen and pats the spot beside him invitingly, so you quickly move to sit there. When you examine the game's case, you see that it's called Mario Kart. By the looks of it, it appears to be a racing game. Interesting. Yamada grabs both controllers and hands one to you as he grins. This was always one of the more popular games. It's a lot of fun racing and throwing things at the other drivers. I'll go over what all the buttons do before we start, okay? Returning his grin. You nod your head as you listen to him explain how to accelerate, hit the brakes, and throw items after you pick them up. When the character screen pops up, it tells you to pick 2 racers before choosing a kart. While you're studying your options, Yamada patiently waits so that you can get first pick. Even though you tell him he can pick whoever he wants, the blonde wants to see which characters you want first. After a few minutes of deliberation, you decide to go with Princess Peach and Princess Daisy since you thought it'd be fun to watch a pair of princesses competing in a go-kart race of all things. Yamada immediately picks Mario and Luigi for his racers. When you give him a curious look in response, he just winks at you, making you wonder about the significance of his choice. Shortly after that, the countdown begins, and you find yourself eagerly watching the screen with steadily increasing excitement. This is your first time doing something like this. Hopefully, you won't do too poorly. Your first race goes better than you expected. While you're far from perfect, you're able to clearly remember which buttons do what and manage to avoid last place. Even though he has played in the past, it's obvious it's been a while since Yamada last played. Still, he manages to get into the groove of things pretty quickly. He actually almost wins, but a blue shell comes out of nowhere, smacking him out of first place as Yoshi and Birdo fly by him to win first. The blonde cries out in dismay. "Nuu, I was so close. DMNU, Bowser, don't think I didn't see it was you." His reaction makes you giggle as you come in 4th place. A groan from the couch has you looking over your shoulder to see Aizawa glaring with one eye open at his friend. Your voice is too loud, Yamada. Shut up. Just when you think he's going to turn around to go back to sleep, the underground hero's gaze falls on the gaming console, and he gives the blonde an incredulous look. You bought her a video game console. Really? Stop spoiling her. She's not your kid. Yamada frowns before jabbing a finger at the other male. I can do whatever I want. Besides, I'm not spoiling her. I'm just providing some entertainment for this boring as hell apartment. Now, I can have something fun to do when I come over, and you refuse to go outside. It's a win-win situation for everyone. Aizawa rolls his eyes before closing them. Whatever. You better not get her addicted to it. If I catch her playing that thing past midnight, I'm getting rid of it. Shiro and Kuro, from their perches on top of the couch, meow loudly in agreement, making you shake your head in amusement. No worries, Aizawa-san. I won't do that, I promise. This is just a fun way to pass the time since I don't really have anything else to do at the moment. The blonde pats you on the back. That's right. If I didn't come, the poor girl might have died from boredom, and it would have been your fault. Shouta. Of course, the underground hero doesn't respond since he's already back asleep. Yamada huffs at that before returning his attention to the TV. For several hours, the two of you go through every course, getting more and more competitive as time passes. It only took you a few races to get comfortable with the game, so after that point, you started competing with Yamada to get first place. I see that red shell. Unshin, don't you dare. Oh no, it seems I have temporarily lost my hearing, so I have no idea what you just said. Sorry about that, Yamada-san. You'll have to tell me later after I beat you. His anguished yell is so loud it makes the cats jump and scurry off toward the hallway. Meanwhile, you're cackling as you claim your rightful place as the winner. While the blonde groans in dismay about his loss, your stomach begins to growl, reminding you that you haven't eaten lunch yet. How about we take a break for lunch? I can make us something. Yamada's face brightens. All right, sounds good to me. We should cook together. It'll be fun. Before you can agree, Aizawa's annoyed voice cuts in. No. Last time you tried cooking in my kitchen, you started a fire. You're not allowed anywhere near there. Your eyes widen in surprise while the vocal hero pouts at his friend. It was one time. You make one mistake, and suddenly, you can't be trusted in a kitchen. Give me a break, Shouta. The answer is still no. Aizawa drawls. While the two friends squabble, you decide to go ahead and start working on lunch. Luckily, you were able to go to the grocery store on your way home yesterday so that you'd have plenty of ingredients for today's meals. After a few seconds of mental debate, you decide to prepare some beef udon for lunch. Considering how Aizawa eats pretty much anything, you figure he won't care, and you're hoping Yamada will be much the same. Not long after everything is ready, Yamada appears to help bring the food to the living room. Unsurprisingly, Aizawa is stretched out across the couch with his eyes closed. When you approach the couch, he opens his eyes, showing that he hadn't fallen back asleep this time. With a shake of his head, the underground hero moves into a sitting position and leans against the couch's armrest. Yamada takes a seat right beside him and carefully hands him his bowl of noodles before digging into his own. You grab the remote to turn the cable back on while you move to sit on the other side of the blonde. You and Yamada go back and forth over what to watch while Aizawa quietly eats his meal. Meanwhile, Shiro and Kuro reappear to investigate the source of the tasty smell, but no one seems eager to share with the cats. Eventually, you and Yamada settle on some drama where the protagonist is investigating a series of strange disappearances. About halfway into the meal, the vocal hero says, "This is really awesome, Unshin. How long have you been cooking?" Because your gaze is focused on the TV, you miss the sharp look Aizawa aims at the blonde, but Yamada notices it and begins to panic once he realizes what he just asked. Oblivious to what's transpiring beside you, you respond, "I've been cooking since I was a kid. I can't say how old I was for sure, but I bet I learned before I was 10. After I learned, I did all the cooking from that point on. I can't remember who did it before then, though." The two pro-heroes share a look at that while you lean down to pet Shiro who's rubbing against your leg. "Sorry, Shiro, this isn't for you. You've already eaten, remember?" Her response is to meow pitifully, acting as if she's gone days without eating. Silly cat. "Hey, Unshin?" Hearing the uncharacteristically unsure tone in Yamada's voice make you turn to look at him. "Yes?" He rubs the back of his neck nervously. "You do know that you don't have to cook if you don't want to, right? No one is forcing you to do it." You blink in surprise before raising an eyebrow. "If I didn't, Aizawa-san and I would eventually starve. I also don't want to live off junk food like he does." Aizawa rolls his eyes at your remark. That's not what he means. What he's trying to say is you don't have to do anything you don't want to. By the sounds of it, you had to cook in your old home. Here, however, you have the right now to choose whether you do or don't. If there are some days when you don't feel like cooking, then don't. No one will criticize you for it. Your eyes widen in surprise at his words. That's the first time someone has ever said something like that to you. From what you can recall, you were always expected to cook the meals. If you didn't cook for yourself, you didn't eat. Dimly, you can recall cooking for someone else as well. It was just part of your routine. You never imagined getting the option to choose whether or not you cooked. The corners of your lips tug upwards. "Thank you. While I never thought I was being forced to cook here, I do appreciate being given the option to not cook. I honestly never gave much thought to me doing all the cooking since I just wanted to make sure we all ate healthy meals." Grinning, Yamada cheerfully pats you on the back. "You're doing a good job of taking care of Shouta, Unshin. He actually looks well fed, and because he hasn't been pulling any all-nighters lately to work, he's actually been getting some sleep. He's looking less like a zombie each day." "Good job." Aizawa roughly elbows his friend in the side, making the other flinch from the pain, before focusing his gaze on you. "I appreciate the food, but I don't want you to ever feel obligated to cook for me. If you ever decide to take a break, I'll be fine. Despite what you think, I can survive without having 3 good meals." You know he's right. The fact that he's still alive after all these years is proof of that. Still, you don't know if you could ever skip cooking since you make all 3 of his meals nowadays. While it's true he can just get food from the cafeteria for lunch, Aizawa typically prefers to sleep and skip lunch instead, so the only way you can ensure he eats is by preparing his meals. Yamada starts snickering. "You've gotten the poor girl so worried about your eating habits, Shouta. The reason she cooks so much is mostly your fault." His laughter cuts off with a wince when he receives another elbow to the side. "Don't get mad at me for speaking the truth, Shouta." Aizawa scowls. "Shut up. You're too noisy, Yamada." As Yamada starts loudly complaining about his friend's rough treatment, you just chuckle. These two are quite the entertaining pair. Their antics are always so fun to watch, most likely because their personalities are so different. One wouldn't normally think that guys with such contrasting personalities would be such good friends, but somehow, these two make it work. Just goes to show that opposites really do attract. It honestly makes you a little jealous since you would love nothing more than to have a close relationship like that. Hopefully, one day you will be able to make a friend who you can have fun with like that. That would be nice, really nice. Once everyone finishes eating, Yamada immediately volunteers to take care of the cleanup since you did all the cooking. Since Aizawa doesn't complain about the blonde entering the kitchen, you assume he's alright with it as long as Yamada doesn't try to cook. After Yamada heads for the kitchen, you quickly move to sit on the floor, so the underground hero can have the couch to himself again. Once you're seated on the floor, Shiro immediately jumps into your lap and rubs her head against your scent. You smile as you run your fingers through her soft fur. Meanwhile, Kuro makes himself comfortable on top of Aizawa after the man stretches out across the couch. About 10 minutes later, Yamada returns to the living room and takes a seat beside you. After he takes a moment to give Shiro a chin scratch, the bespectacled man directs his focus to the video game console before you. Rather than keep playing Mario Kart, he takes out the game and puts in the other one he bought. The name on that case says Super Smash Bros. You immediately recognize several of the characters from Mario Kart on the cover. It appears to be a fighting game. Like last time, the blonde explains the rules and tells you which button does what. This time he doesn't wait for you to pick since players can apparently all play as the same character if they want to. According to him, Yamada never sticks with one character for long since he finds it fun trying out everyone. His first pick is Fox while you eventually choose Kirby. While you get knocked around a good bit at first, much like with Mario Kart, you catch on pretty quickly and soon start giving the vocal hero a run for his money. Anytime he gets kicked off screen, Yamada cries out in dismay only to be glared at by Aizawa. You wonder why Aizawa doesn't just go back to the bedroom to sleep since it's obviously going to be noisy in the living room thanks to Yamada. You are tempted to ask him why he hasn't done so but decide not to since you don't want him to misunderstand and think you're trying to kick him out of his own living room. It's probably better if you don't ask since you don't want to risk annoying him further. Instead, you decide to ask a different question once you see that Aizawa hasn't gone back to sleep. Hey, Aizawa-san, would you like to play? His response is immediate. No. Yamada waves a dismissive hand in his friend's direction. Don't bother with him, Unshin. Shouta is no good with these types of things. He knows he'll do really bad, so he's trying to save face by not joining in. He fears my awesome skills as he should. There's a long pause, and just as you wonder if the underground hero will even reply, you hear him say, hand me your controller. All you can do is silently comply, too stunned to make a comment. Yamada, on the other hand, is grinning smugly, as if expecting this sudden turn of events. Maybe this is his method of getting Aizawa involved in things. This time the blonde picks Samus to fight with while the other male picks Link. The fight starts shortly after that without any words exchanged. Even though the game mechanics were never explained to him, Aizawa handles himself remarkably well. He gives as good as he gets, so it appears that they're evenly matched. Several minutes pass with them exchanging blows before Aizawa finally gets the drop on his friend. The underground hero has a scary grin on his face when Link knocks Samus off the platform, successfully killing him. Nuuo, I can't believe you actually knocked me off first, Aizawa snorts. I can. You're nowhere near as good at this as you think you are. Offended, Yamada releases a battle cry before attacking with Samus once his character reappears on screen. This time around it's the blonde who emerges victorious. The battle continues with the pro heroes taking turns killing each other. By the looks of things, they're going to be tied when the timer runs out, meaning they'll have to do the sudden death round. As you predicted, that's exactly what happens. Both men get eerily quiet right before the final round begins. You find yourself leaning forward in anticipation, eager to see who will triumph in the end. It turns out to be a really close match like the others, but in the end, Aizawa wins with an impressive combo attack. Yamada drops his controller as he cries out in anguish over his loss. Meanwhile, a grinning Aizawa returns the controller to you before reclining back against the couch. It would seem he's done playing. You were hoping he'd play around with you, but maybe you should try asking another time. Even though the blonde keeps demanding a rematch, the underground hero refuses, opting to recline while petting Kuro who has made himself comfortable on his owner's scent. You decide the only thing you can do is offer to play with Yamada and hope it'll distract him from his recent loss. Thankfully, your efforts are successful since Yamada soon forgets about his earlier loss to Aizawa due to being completely focused on fighting you. That's how the next hour passes, with the two of you fighting in one close match after another. The two of you are eventually pulled out of the video game zone when Yamada's cell phone starts ringing. Immediately, Yamada pauses the game to answer the call. A few seconds later, the frowning blonde rises to his feet. After he ends the call, Yamada gives you a sheepish look. Sorry, Inshin. I was just called in for work. I was hoping I could stay longer, but duty calls, you know? Nodding, you immediately rise to your feet after pulling Shiro out of your lap and follow him to the door. Thank you for coming by, Yamada-san. I had a lot of fun. He grins as he claps you on the shoulder. Same here. We'll have to do this again sometime soon. See ya tomorrow. Before he leaves, Yamada yells over his shoulder. Bye, Shada. Don't miss me too much. I won't. The deadpan tone makes you snort while the vocal hero just shakes his head with a smile. After aiming some finger guns your way, Yamada quickly heads out the door. Since you still have some free time before dinner, you decide to return to the living room and try playing more Smash Brothers. Yamada made a crucial mistake when he decided to leave the gaming system here. Now, the only way he can practice is by coming over while you're free to play as much as you want, within reason of course. Aizawa remains silent as you make yourself comfortable on the floor and choose the game's solo player option. Every now and then, you check to see if he's asleep, but even though his eyes will be closed each time you look, he's been consistently petting Kuro, so unless he figured out how to do that while asleep, you're pretty sure he's still awake. About an hour later, you find yourself having trouble fighting Kirby, who keeps eating you and trying to spit you out off the platform. Despite your best efforts to take the pink menace out with your Zelda, you're not having much luck. Try more long-distance attacks. Going in close just makes it easier for him to swallow you. You jolt in surprise, not expecting to hear the older man's voice after spending so much time in silence. That's when his words properly register in your mind, making you realize that he just gave you fighting advice for a video game. Once a teacher, always a teacher, I guess. You muse. The corners of your lips tug upwards as you decide to follow the man's advice by throwing some items at Kirby whenever he tries to SCK your Zelda up. You hit the jackpot when you come across a bomb item, which you immediately chunk at your opponent, who goes flying off screen thanks to the blast. You cheer in victory, grateful to have finally defeated the pink menace. When you turn around, it's just in time to catch a quick glimpse of Aizawa's amused expression before his normal tired expression replaces it. Thank you, Aizawa-san. Your advice was really helpful. He waves a dismissive hand in your direction. No need to thank me. I just didn't want to get stuck watching the same fight for the rest of the evening. Before you can reply, Shiro jumps into your lap and starts meowing loudly as she presses her paws against your Saint. This makes you laugh. Are you hungry, Shiro? Both cats cry out in union, which you assume means yes. So, you pull the white cat into your arms and make your way to the kitchen with Kuro following close behind. Once their food bowls are full, you check their water bowls before returning to the living room. Are you hungry too, Aizawa-san? When he shakes his head, you decide to return to playing Super Smash Brothers since you're not particularly hungry yet either. Before you can take a seat on the floor. However, Aizawa surprises you when he moves into a seated position and gestures for you to sit beside him. He's currently looking at his cell phone, so that must mean he received a message while you were feeding the cats. After you sit down, Aizawa sets his cell phone down on the coffee table before slouching against the back of the couch. The principal wants to do the field trip this week. He said all the preparations are done so we can go whenever. Your eyes widen in surprise as your stomach churns uneasily at his words. I wasn't expecting it to happen so soon after the original date, but I guess it makes sense. It's not like there's any definitive proof that they'll attack now that all these extra measures have been taken. Aizawa turns to look at you, eyes serious. I know I've already asked you this before, but I want to ask again. Are you sure the villains will attack the SG even after everything we've done to prevent it? A lump forms in your throat at the question, making it strong for you to swallow. As much as you'd like to say everything will be fine, you can't. Even though you haven't had any more visions about the attack, that doesn't mean it won't happen. Deep in your soul, you just know it will happen one way or another. You don't know how the villains will know what day the class will be there, but they will find out somehow. You clench your hands into fists. Yes, I'm sure. I don't know how it will happen, but the villains will attack. So, please make sure everyone will be ready. Tell All Might to refrain from using up his time limit. Tell 13 to. Your voice falters when you feel your head begin to PND, but you try to ignore the pain. Be careful around the warp villain. And you, it feels like your head is being abused by a jackhammer. Still, you can't let that stop you. You have to warn him. You never told him about how serious his injuries will be if no one intervenes in time. You give Aizawa a pleading look. Please be careful. I can't tell you what happens, but it's really bad. Before you can say anything else, his eyes flash red, and your mind goes blank, the memories of your visions vanishing along with the pain. When he finally blinks a few seconds later, your memories return, but the pain, thankfully, does not. The older man carefully scrutinizes your face, probably looking for any signs that you may still be in pain, before he closes his eyes with a sigh. I got it. I'll warn 13 and make sure All Might has enough notice so he won't use up his limit before the trip. Your shoulders slump in relief at his words. Hopefully, things will turn out better since they have been warned in advance. Are you planning on telling the kids about the attack? Aizawa pinches the bridge of his nose. They have a right to know, and they'd be better off if they were prepared in advance. So, whenever I make the announcement for the trip, I'll tell them what you saw, and let them know we've made preparations in case the attack does happen. It's at that moment the cats return to the living room and decide to make themselves comfortable on the couch. Shiro commandeers your lap while Kuro takes Aizawa's. A smile forms on your lips as you pet the white cat. Will it just be you three, or will other teachers be there too? He reaches for the eye drops on the coffee table and adds some to his eyes. Just us three at first. If there is an attack, the rest of the staff will be alerted and come immediately. The principal will be monitoring the USG the whole time, so if something happens, he'll know right away. Nodding your head, you glance at the man beside you before moving your gaze to the TV where you see the paused screen for the Smash Brothers game. After a few minutes pass in silence, you ask, "Hey, Aizawa-san? Would you like me to teach you how to play Mario Kart?" Aizawa raises an eyebrow at you. Why? You grin mischievously. Well, if Yamada-san ever tries to challenge you at that game, he'll be expecting you not to be familiar with it. I bet he'd be really surprised if you turned out to be really good at it. There's a long pause as he considers this, and then, the underground hero dons a similar grin. Fair enough. Just don't tell him I've played with you. A laugh escapes you. Of course, that would ruin the surprise. And that's how you spend the rest of your Sunday. Despite the looming threat of the USG attack, you end up having a lot of fun. Your first day off after beginning your job as a Tao was a lot of fun. Now, if only this peace could last. The next 3 days are surprisingly uneventful. You grade papers and organize paperwork while occasionally offering your students help with their homework, and every day, after school, you meet up with Shinsou to work out and help him practice with his quirk. However, some exciting things do happen. Hagakure cheerfully tells you on Tuesday that they can, in fact, make a costume specifically suited for her quirk, although it'll take a few days to create it. What a relief. Now, you don't have to worry about your student fighting naked. Speaking of costumes, Yayurazu has come up with a costume idea she wants to try out. Rather than the top she has now, she wants to wear a red sleeveless CRP top that'll give her easy access to her CH-shunt, and also leave her stomach and upper back completely exposed. Along with the CRP top, she'll be wearing knee and elbow pads and some shorts that end well above her knees, just in case she needs to use the fat in her thighs. Yayurazu also decided to get a red cloak that looks much like the one Takoyami's hero costume has, except hers is much shorter and only reaches her waist. Naturally, you are very happy about this turn of events. You're glad that you won't have to worry about Hagakure and Yayurazu anymore. So, all in all, it's been a great week so far. Unfortunately, you haven't been able to completely enjoy it because the USG field trip has been constantly lingering in the back of your mind since you spoke with Aizawa about it on Sunday. You know the field trip will be happening soon, and with each day that passes, your nerves gradually worsen. Thankfully, you've been able to keep up a strong front when around your students since they're always so good at distracting you. However, Shinsou picks up on your strange behavior on Tuesday, so you have to give a vague explanation for your actions. Thankfully, he remembered what you told him on Saturday, so he's able to quickly figure out that the villain attack you came to UA to prevent will be happening soon. 2 days after your talk with Shinsou, Aizawa directs you to the principal's office after you both arrive at UA instead of the one a classroom, and you immediately realize the time for the field trip has come. Much to your surprise, Aizawa immediately leaves after dropping you off rather than stay behind to meet with Nedzu. By the looks of it, the older man wants to lessen your involvement in the field trip as much as he can. Maybe he picked up on your nervousness and decided to spare you the awkwardness of being present while he explained the full situation to the students. Somehow, you get the feeling that's probably the case. It's clear he doesn't want you to come along to the USG, and you can't blame him. As much as you'd like to help, you know you'd be nothing but a burden if you went. You can't fight to protect yourself, let alone your students. Your quirk acts up at random, so it would be pretty much useless on the battlefield. You can't think of one good reason for why he should let you go. Still, that doesn't quell the uneasy feeling in your stomach or stop the guilt from weighing heavily on your heart. You wish you weren't so useless. While you're with the principal, you both go over everything that you know, making sure there isn't anything vital that you've failed to mention. One thing that's brought up is how long it takes reinforcements to arrive. You're not sure what the reason for that is, but Nedzu figures a jamming quirk was involved to prevent communications with others outside of the USD. You're even able to warn the hybrid about what happens to 13 thanks to his sharp mind being able to decipher your hints. It didn't take him long to piece together that the warp villain could use 13's quirk against her using his own quirk. By the time you both finish this discussion, you figure that Aizawa and class 1 have departed. A part of you wonders if any of the students asked to remain behind in fear of the possible villain attack. But you think it's unlikely. They probably think the idea of villains successfully attacking US campus is impossible. The poor kids will soon learn how wrong they are. Nedzu offers you the option of staying in his office while he monitors the USD, but you decide to head back to the 1 classroom instead. You're too nervous to just sit still, so you're hoping Aizawa left you some work to do while he's gone. Much to your relief, the underground hero did, in fact, leave you some papers to grade. Who knew you'd one day actually be excited about grading homework? Unfortunately, it doesn't take you long to finish grading, so you're left having to find your own way to pass the time. Desperate to keep busy, you start cleaning the classroom, starting with the board. Not long after you begin cleaning, your quirk suddenly activates, and the classroom is replaced with the scenery of the USD. Your eyes widen in horror once you realize that the villains are indeed attacking today, and despite the teacher's efforts, the students still get separated and sent to the different training areas by the warp quirk villain who's apparently called Kirigiri. The worst part of the vision is the fact that there appear to be more villains compared to your visions of the original attack. You have no way of proving it, but it definitely looks like there are more attackers this time around. There's also a villain at the entrance who appears to be using his quirk to summon some kind of barrier around the building to keep anyone from entering or escaping. You know for a fact that he wasn't there in any of your original visions. When the vision ends, you're a trembling mess. How could this happen? After all the careful preparations, how do things still end up so badly? Sure, you knew the attack would happen, but you didn't imagine it would actually become even worse. The fact that there are more villains compared to before is proof they knew the school postponed the field trip for a reason. Since they knew the school was expecting them, they brought more manpower and even a way to stop outside help from coming right away. Your mind begins to race as you try to figure out what you should do. Obviously, you need to let Nedzu know, but you can't stop thinking about that barrier quirk. How are the pro heroes supposed to get past it? How much can that villain block? Using it. As you quickly go over what quirks are at the faculty's disposal, a particular pro hero comes to mind, and you quickly pull out your cell phone. Rather than waste time running around looking for him, you figure calling him is the best method. Thankfully, you're pretty sure he doesn't have class right now. After a few agonizingly slow seconds pass, a cheerful voice answers. Hey, Unshin, what's up? This is the first time you've called me while at school. You need something. The tension in your body eases a fraction at the sound of his voice. Even without trying, Present Mike is very good at reassuring others. Mixin, I need a favor. I can't really explain because of my quirk, but I really need your help. He goes quiet for several seconds before replying. Is it about the USD field trip? I know they left this morning. They're probably arriving right about now. You grip the phone tightly. Yes, I just had another vision. I haven't told the principal yet because I wanted to talk to you first. Could you please head over there? I'm sure you'd like an explanation, but... His voice interrupts before you can continue. It's fine. I understand. If you think I should head out there, then I'll leave right now. I'll call the principal and let him know I'm going over there, so he'll be aware of what's going on. The relief you feel is almost staggering. Thank you so much. Also, there's some new information I need to tell you as well. After taking a deep breath, you reveal the more worrisome parts of your vision. Barrier quirk. More villains. Your head is throbbing with pain as you utter those words through clenched teeth. Still, you have no regrets. No matter what, you have to let the pro heroes know. You can practically hear the grin in Present Mike's voice when he responds. That's why you called me first. You think my quirk can overpower the barrier. It's true that not many quirks can block mine, so with all might busy inside, I'm probably the best bet. Nice thinking, Unshin. I'll let Nedzu-san know right away. Thanks for the heads up. With a quick reassurance that everything will be alright, the vocal hero ends the call, and you're left staring at your phone with a worried frown. A part of you wants to call Aizawa, but he's probably already inside the USD now. You don't want to risk distracting him if you happen to call right when the villains attack. Even though you want nothing more than to go help, you remain where you are, standing in the 1 classroom, your heart heavy with dread. What if it's not enough? What if the villains manage to hurt the students due to their increased numbers? What if All Might fails to defeat the strange creature in time? In your vision, Aizawa and 13 were fighting all the underlings while Shirogaki and Kirigiri watched them. How long until the teachers grow tired enough that the head villains take advantage and attack them? You sit down at the desk, cradling your pounding head in your hands. All your worrying has made your headache worse. However, you can't stop your thoughts from racing despite how unhelpful you know it is to fret about the what-ifs. It's at that moment the intercom system turns on, and Netsu makes an announcement about the attack. You're so distracted by your throbbing headache, you don't even hear what all he's saying, probably something about the school's evacuation plan. Several minutes after the announcement ends, you hear someone running down the hall. While this isn't too surprising considering the situation at hand, it's strange that you can only hear one set of footsteps, which are apparently heading your way for some reason. Curious, you focus your gaze on the doorway, so you can see who the owner of those footsteps is. Seconds later, your eyes widen in shock when you see Shinsou appear in the doorway, Sin heaving from his sprint to get here. Shinsou! What are you doing here? Shouldn't you be with your class? He shrugs in an attempt to look nonchalant as he comes to stand by the desk where you're sitting. I sneaked out. It was surprisingly easy. Just had to wait till they were gathering us all together, and I ran off once the teacher wasn't looking in my direction. While you should probably scold the student for sneaking off, you can't stop yourself from smiling in amusement. Well, you get points for stealth, but why did you sneak off like that? You, of all people, should know that I'm the last person to go to in a situation like this. Rather than make a snarky remark like you expect, Shinsou averts his eyes as he awkwardly rubs the back of his neck. When I heard the announcement, I realized that this attack must be what you told me about. I knew they wouldn't bring you along, so I figured I should go look for you just in case you were alone. You blink in surprise at his words before slowly tilting your head. Were you worried about me? A flush colors his cheeks as he determinedly doesn't look in your direction. I knew you were feeling stressed about the attack, so I figured you'd be even worse off on the day it actually happens, since the staff would either be preoccupied with going to the USH or helping keep the other students under control. I figured you'd be alone, so I thought you'd prefer to have some company. If you want me to leave, I will. Immediately, you shake your head. You don't have to leave. I'm actually really happy that you decided to check on me. I was just making things worse for myself by dwelling in my negative thoughts. When he finally brings his gaze to meet yours, you smile warmly. Thank you, Shinsou. I appreciate you coming for me. The tension in his frame eases at your words. With a nod, Shinsou moves to lean against the side of the desk. So, I take it, judging from your expression, that things aren't going as well as you hoped they would? Your smile turns into a frown as you pinch the bridge of your nose in hopes that the headache will soon leave you. No. A while ago, I had another vision. It was basically the same as what I had before about the attack, but worse. There were more villains in this attack compared to the original one, and there's even a villain with a barrier quirk, trying to keep outsiders from helping. It's at that moment your words completely register in your mind, and you realize what you just said. Your eyes widen in surprise when your headache doesn't get worse. Does that mean you can talk about your visions once the event happens? Since they're most likely fighting the villains at this moment, it's now okay for you to talk about what you've seen. Groaning, you bury your face in your arms as you rest them on the desk. Great. Now, I can talk about my visions. I knew I could talk about them once the event ends, but I didn't know I could while it was going on. My quirk is such a pain in the butt. Shinsou snorts as he takes a seat on the edge of the desk, opting out of sitting in one of the students' seats. Well, at least, you were able to warn everyone despite the drawback. UA teachers are always going on about pushing past your limitations, so good job. You roll your eyes at his remark. Rather than respond, you remain silent, noticing with relief when the pounding in your head finally begins to ebb. Being a naturally quiet person himself, the general department student makes no move to break the silence. About 15 minutes later, your phone goes off, making you jolt in surprise. Shinsou snickers at your reaction while you scowl at him. When you check your cell phone, you're surprised to see you've gotten a text message from President Mike. Heart pounding a mile a minute, you quickly check the message, hoping for good news. All that's in the message are several thumbs-up emojis. Despite the lack of words, his message rings clear, causing your shoulders to slump with relief. They're okay. If President Mike's able to text me now, that must mean the villains have been stopped. It's at that moment when your mind and body are finally calming down that it happens. 1 minute, you're fine, and the next, a searing pain encompasses your entire body. Before you even realize what you're doing, you're crying out in pain, dropping your phone on the desk as your body curls inward. Dimly, you're aware of Shinsou calling out to you, but you can't make out what he's saying over the pounding in your ears. You're used to feeling pain because of your quirk, but this is different. While your head is indeed pounding, everything else hurts as well. There's no part of your body that's not in complete agony. While you've never broken a bone in your life as far as you can remember, That's the kind of level of pain you're feeling from both your arms and legs. Your skull feels like someone just rammed it into a brick wall repeatedly. A hand on your back manages to distract you from your pain-riddled thoughts. When you weakly raise your teary eyes, you see Shinsou watching you worriedly. "Sensei, what's going on? You told me your quirk only gives you migraines. This looks way worse than that." You swallow the sob that wants to escape. "Roman too don't know. I've never felt a pain like this before. I have no idea what's happening." He frowns as he moves to kneel beside your chair. "What hurts?" Tears begin to fall despite your best effort to rein them in. "Everything. There's no part of me that's not in agony, and I have no idea why." Shinsou's eyes grow large. "We need to take you to the infirmary." The purple-haired student is right, but there's a problem with that. Recovery girl went to the Institute, so she won't be in the infirmary right now. She's probably preoccupied with everyone who was attacked. Shaking his head, Shinsou rises to his feet. "We still need to go. You can't just stay here and suffer." "Sensei." You smile weakly. "I know, but that's not the only problem. I don't think I can make it to the infirmary on my own 2 feet. It hurts just sitting here. I can't imagine how agonizing it'll be to actually walk. I honestly have no idea how I'm still conscious at this point." He winces at your reply. Just as the boy opens his mouth to respond, Shinsou pauses. Soon after, his expression turns contemplative. "Maybe it's because your mind is too overwhelmed by the pain. If you had a moment of relief, you probably would pass out as soon as you got the chance." Realization dawns his features as he gets an idea, but he appears to hesitate about revealing it. After a few seconds pass, Shinsou finally meets your eyes and asks, "Can I use my quirk on you?" "I think it can help." Your brows furrow in confusion. "Your quirk? How?" "You know how your mind goes blank whenever my quirk first takes over?" When you slowly nod your head, the GD student continues, "I think if I do that to you, now your mind will be able to disconnect from the pain in your body long enough that you can pass out. Then, I can just carry you to the infirmary." Shinsou rubs the back of his neck. "I have no way of proving that it'll work, and if you'd rather I didn't, I won't push it. I just wanted to throw that idea out there in case you wanted to give it a try." His posture relaxes when you smile. "Let's try it. Like I've said before, I trust you, Shinsou. If you think there's a chance this will work, then I believe you." A small grin forms on his face. "Let's hope for the best." Your smile grows. "I'm really glad you came to check on me." "Thank you, Shinsou." That's when your mind goes foggy just like it did all the other times he used his quirk on you for training. Just like the boy theorized, the moment Shinsou brainwashes you, your mind goes blank, and you can no longer feel the pain encompassing your body. If you could sigh from relief, you would. Instead, you let the mind-numbing exhaustion that's been hanging at the edges of your mind finally run its course. With nothing to keep your brain alert, you're able to escape into the world of unconsciousness. Right before you pass out, you hear Shinsou mutter, "Never thought I'd hear someone actually thank me for using my quirk." After that, everything fades to black. When you finally regain consciousness, the first thing that registers in your tired mind is that the pain you were experiencing before you passed out has unfortunately not disappeared. Admittedly, it doesn't feel as excruciating as it did the last time you were awake, but it's still pretty awful. You don't think you'll be able to move any of your limbs without feeling pain anytime soon. The next thing you notice is that you're currently lying in one of the infirmary beds, and it's dark. Judging from the lack of sunlight coming from the nearby window, you guess it's sometime in the evening. Looks like you've been out for a while. You're finally awake. Mindful of your incredibly sore head, you turn it marginally, so you can see Aizawa sitting at your bedside. He looks even more exhausted than usual. It's a wonder the man is still awake, considering what kind of morning he had. Thankfully, the underground hero doesn't appear seriously injured like he did during your visions of the original villain attack. Whatever wounds he did receive must have been already healed by Recovery Girl. That would explain why he looks so tired. You attempt to smile, but it ends up coming out more like a grimace. "Aizawa-san." Frowning, Aizawa leans closer as he rests his arms against his knees. "On a scale of 1 to 10, how much pain are you in?" Without hesitation, you reply, 10. "Everything hurts like hell. If I didn't remember being in the classroom when this happened, I would have thought a truck ran me over." His frown deepens at your words. "We heard from Shinsou what happened. Recovery Girl checked you over, but there's not a single injury on you. It's obvious you're in pain, but we have no idea why. The principal thinks it's related to your quirk. Have you ever experienced a drawback this severe?" Just as you're about to shake your head, the pounding in your head increases, so you decide to stick with verbal responses for now. "No, this has never happened to me before. I know I'm having memory issues, but I don't think I've lost any related to me using my quirk. So, if this had happened in the past, I'm sure I would have remembered. Aizawa tiredly rubs his eyes. So, the person who was hurt the worst from the attack doesn't even know how it happened. Even though you weren't at the state, I find it strong to believe this is just a coincidence. You give him a hopeful look. If I was the worst off, then that means everyone else is okay. I noticed you're nowhere near as injured as you were in my visions. He slouches back in his chair with a sigh. None of the children were seriously injured. Midoriya was the worst off with a couple of broken fingers. All Might had a rough time with that Namu creature, but he managed to beat it without getting too injured. 13 and I didn't receive any major wounds either since backup arrived in time. The older man tilts his head. Mike said you had another vision right before the attack and told him to come take care of the villain with the barrier quirk. Apparently, the villain can only block tangible attacks, so his quirk was useless against Mike's. Your relief is obvious as you smile at his words. I'm so glad. Even though I wasn't able to stop the attack, my warning prevented you all from getting seriously hurt. What a relief. Aizawa huffs. It would have been better if you could have pulled that off without hurting yourself as well. You're reminding me of Midoriya and All Might, which is not a good thing. All you can do is grin sheepishly in response. Soon after that, silence envelops the room, and you find yourself lost in your thoughts. This pain has to be caused by my quirk. I can't think of anything else that could do this unless another quirk was involved. But Shinsou was the only other person there, so that can't be it. But why? It only hurts me when I try to reveal my visions. Why would it do it after everything was over and done? And why is the pain so bad this time around? It's almost like I'm being punished for something. At the word punished, you find yourself faltering. Your racing mind comes to a complete halt as your eyes grow large. What if? What if I am being punished? This is the first time I've ever tried to interfere with a vision of an event of this magnitude. Maybe this is what happens if I try to change the future. Your eyebrows furrow in confusion, but nothing really changed. The attack still happened. The only thing my warning really changed was, your eyes widen in realization. No way. Slowly, you turn your witty gaze toward Aizawa, who's carefully watching you. The hint of concern you see in his dark eyes would normally reassure you, but you're too busy internally freaking out to take comfort in his show of concern. The only thing I was able to change was the amount of injuries dealt to the teachers and Midoriya. Is it possible the pain they would have received somehow transferred to me? Is this another backlash of using my quirk to change the future? But how is that possible? Aizawa leans forward as he holds your gaze. What's wrong? Did you remember something? You open and close your mouth a few times, unsure if you should tell him about your theory. However, when you realize he's genuinely concerned about you, you decide that keeping it a secret really isn't fair, considering how kind he's been to you all this time. Seeking your lips nervously, you share your thoughts with him. I didn't remember anything, but I have a theory of how this could have happened to me. It's a really crazy one, though, so you'll probably find it strong to believe. He rolls his eyes. Today I saw All Might battle a weird creature with multiple quirks. I've dealt with plenty of crazy things already, so I think I can handle one more. The corners of your lips turn upwards as you chuckle softly. You make a good point. Realizing you have his undivided attention now, you take a deep breath before you start speaking. I think you're right about my quirk being the cause of me being in so much pain. I was confused at first since I've never been put through pain like this before, and I couldn't understand why it was happening. But then I got an idea. What if there's another drawback to my quirk that I'm unaware of? His brows furrow. Another drawback? If you've never experienced it until now, that means you did something to cause it that you've never done before. As expected, Aizawa catches on fast. With a nod, you explain, this is the first time I've ever tried to change what happened in my visions. Sure, I stopped Mainta from bothering Yayurazu on my first day, but I've never tried to stop an event that's on the same scale as the Yasuji attack. There are certain events that you cannot change. While I didn't stop the attack from happening, I prevented it from ending as badly as it could have. There's a long pause as you wait for the older man to connect the dots. Because you're carefully studying his expression, you know exactly when he comes to the same conclusion as you. His eyes widen in realization. You prevented our injuries but got injured yourself. So, you're saying if you ever prevent someone from getting seriously injured, the pain they would have felt would transfer to you instead. Slowly, you nod your head, mindful of your headache. I have no way to prove it, but that's the only explanation I can come up with that makes sense. Both my arms and legs feel like they've been broken, and thanks to my warning, your arms and Midoriya's legs are fine. You also received damage to your head in my original vision, which would explain why my head won't stop throbbing. The other pains I have are probably related to 13 and All Might. Aizawa just stares, obviously caught off guard by the amount of damage he was able to avoid. After a few seconds, he just shakes his head. No wonder you passed out. How the hell are you awake if you're that bad off? You try to shrug and immediately regret it, wincing from the movement. Shinsou had to use his quirk so I could separate my mind long enough from the pain so I could pass out. I don't really have that kind of luxury now. His eyes suddenly turn red, signaling the activation of his quirk. While you're originally surprised by this, you quickly realize what he's trying to do and give him a shaky smile. Sorry, Aizawa-san. This drawback isn't something that can be erased. He scowls as his eyes return to normal. Running a hand through his hair, the older man moves to stand. The old lady left out some painkillers along with some medicine that'll put you to sleep if you want to try it. She also put out some crackers for you to eat. It's been around 12 hours since you passed out, so you're probably hungry. Your eyes widen in surprise. 12 hours? That long? Aizawa nods as he opens the mini-fridge by the heroine's desk to pull out a water bottle. Yeah, you didn't move at all despite all of the poking and prodding the old lady did. She figured the best thing to do was wait for you to wake up. Since we didn't know when that would be, I volunteered to stay. Someone her age shouldn't be pulling all-nighters after all. After he sets the food, water, and medicine on the nearby nightstand, the underground hero pulls out the remote that moves the top half of the bed so that you can sit up. While the movement does cause you discomfort, you just clench your teeth and grit through it. You smile gratefully when he places the water and painkillers in your hands. He hands you the crackers after you take the pills. Thank you, Aizawa-san. I'm sorry you had to stay so late with me. Will Shiro and Kuro be alright? He waves a hand dismissively. I asked Mike to drop by to feed them, so they'll be fine. It's not the first time I've stayed out the whole night. Despite the pain in your arms, you're determined to feed yourself since the alternative is way too embarrassing. You slowly raise your hand so you can nibble on a cracker. It's after you take your first bite you realize just how hungry you are. You haven't eaten anything since breakfast after all. After you take a swig of your water, you try to give the man a reassuring smile. If you'd like to go home, I'd understand. Aizawa-san, you've had a really exhausting day after all. I'll fall asleep after I take the medicine, so I should be fine till the morning. Aizawa starts adding eye drops to his eyes. It's fine. I can sleep here just as comfortably as I can at home. Besides, leaving you here without any kind of supervision is out of the question. What if something else happens? What will you do? When he puts it like that, you can't really argue with him. While you don't think anything will happen, it's not like you have any proof that you'll definitely be okay on your own. You nod in understanding after you finish off another cracker. Good point. Considering everything that happened today, it makes sense to be careful, just in case. It's after you polish off the last of the food that an idea comes to mind that makes you frown. Aizawa-san, who all knows about what happened to me besides you, Shinsou, and Recovery Girl? He yawns into his hand. All the faculty members who know who you are. After Shinsou brought you here, he used your phone to message Principal Nedzu, who eventually told everyone else. If you're wondering about the kids, Midoriya is the only one who knows because he came by the infirmary to check on All Might after the battle. I wasn't in the room at the time, but All Might decided to tell the kid, even though we were trying to keep everything a secret until we knew more about what happened to you. The way his eyebrow twitches shows you how he feels about All Might spilling the secret. The symbol of peace probably couldn't bring himself to lie to Midoriya when he saw how worried his successor was on your behalf. You bite your lip. If All Might told him to keep quiet about it, Midoriya won't say anything to the other kids, but will they be told now that we have a good idea about what happened? I don't want to worry them. Aizawa raises his eyebrow at you. You'll likely be bedridden for several days, so it won't take long for the kids to notice that you're not there. They'll start asking questions. Do you really want to lie to them? Your shoulders slump at his question. No. I'd feel even worse if I lied about what happened. That's when another question about the students comes to mind. This morning, when you told the kids about the possible attack, how did they react? The older man shrugs his shoulders. Pretty much how I expected them to. Half the class didn't really believe me since nothing like this has ever happened in U.S. school history, while the other half took the potential threat seriously. No one asked to be left out of the field trip, so unfortunately, all of them were there when the villains attacked. Well, you can't say you're too surprised. Of course, some of the students would have a strong time believing villains would actually have the nerve to attack Yua. They probably thought the warning was another of their teacher's logical ruses. Still, it's impressive that no one backed out, considering some did take the threat seriously. Aizawa hands you the sleeping pills he left on the nearby stand. Enough questions for now. Take these and get some sleep. The sooner you go to bed, the sooner I can. Amused, you take the medicine and swallow it with the last bit of your water. You can feel it start to kick in not long after the older man lowers the bed back to its original position. A yawn passes your lips as your eyelids grow heavy. Thank you, Aizawa-san. I appreciate you staying with me. Right after you utter those words, your eyes fall shut, and you enter a blissfully pain-free slumber. The last thing you're aware of before you fall asleep is a hand ruffling your hair. I should be the one thanking you. Because of the villain attack, classes are cancelled on Friday. While this doesn't really affect you since you won't be attending classes for a while anyway, you are glad the kids will get a little reprieve after everything they went through on Thursday. When you wake up that morning, you discover that you have some new visitors. In addition to Aizawa, you see that Nezu, Recovery Girl, Present Mike, and Midnight are also in the infirmary. While you can understand why the principal and nurse are here, you're surprised that the other two teachers are here as well. You must have really worried them if they came, even though school was cancelled. Unfortunately, while the pain has lessened somewhat, it still hurts for you to move, so you end up wincing a lot as Recovery Girl checks you over. While she does this, Aizawa explains your theory of what caused this to happen to you. Present Mike and Midnight are both staring at you with wide eyes while Nezu is thoughtfully rubbing his chin. I see. So, that's how it is. I had a feeling your quirk was involved, but it never crossed my mind that there would be a physical backlash if you did. In fact, change part of the future. It would seem you have quite the dangerous quirk, Unsen. Recovery Girl huffs. I'll say. This is the first time I've ever come across a quirk with so many drawbacks, especially ones this severe. While you're not physically injured, you're obviously suffering from the pain that a person would normally have if they broke their arms and legs. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. I don't want you leaving the bed until the pain is gone, you hear me? You stare at her with wide eyes before saying the first thing that comes to mind. But how will I eat? Both Present Mike and Midnight snort while Nezu chuckles at your question. Meanwhile, Aizawa rolls his eyes, acting as if you have no reason to worry when he, of all people, should understand why you're so concerned. Thankfully, Recovery Girl, with her abounding wisdom, does understand since she aims a sharp glare at the underground hero. I don't want to hear that she ate nothing but take out the whole time she was on bed rest. She's been taking care of your diet for the last week, so it's time that you return the favor. A scowl forms on the tired man's face, but he doesn't argue with her, obviously realizing this is a battle he can't win. His blonde friend snickers at his reaction. Don't worry, Shouta. I'll come lend you a hand. No. You're not allowed in my kitchen, Aizawa retorts. Midnight grins at the vocal hero's disappointed expression. How about I come over and lend a hand then? Aizawa raises an eyebrow at her. Can you even cook? She pouts. Of course, I can. Don't lump me in with Yamada when you haven't even tried my cooking. Present Mike gives them both offended looks. Hey, I'm not a bad cook. I just messed up that one time, he turns to look at you. You believe me, don't you, Unshin? You smile in amusement. Sure, I do. But that doesn't change the fact that it's Aizawa-san's kitchen. He gets to choose who uses it. The underground hero nods his head while the blonde frowns in dismay. However, his expression quickly brightens. Then, I'll just cook at home and bring the food to you. Shouta can't complain then, right? Aizawa just shakes his head. Whatever. As long as my kitchen stays in one piece, I don't care what you do. Nezu claps his paws together, gaining everyone's attention. Now that that's taken care of, we should work on how we'll be transporting Unsen to Aizawa-kun's apartment. She is fine to leave, correct? At his question, Recovery Girl nods. Since my quirk can't heal this type of pain, there's nothing more I can do for her besides prescribe some painkillers. However, I do want to check on her after a few days. Until then, I think it would be fine for her to rest at his apartment. Her eyes narrow as she stares at Aizawa. Don't let her do anything strenuous. Besides getting up to use the restroom, she's not allowed to leave the bed. He waves a dismissive hand at her. Got it. After that, the principal goes to get a car prepared to transport you while Recovery Girl directs Present Mike toward where she keeps the wheelchairs. While collecting the wheelchair poses no problem, the same can't be said about getting you from the bed to the wheelchair. Everyone seems hesitant to move you, so you take the initiative by slowly moving into a seated position. Several agonizing minutes pass before you have your legs hanging over the side of the bed. Your eyes close as you hang your head. All the while, you do your best to ignore the constant throbbing throughout your whole body. Sweat beads across your forehead from the exertion, but you don't feel like wiping it away at the moment, too tired to care about it. A gentle hand on your shoulder earns your attention, and you open your eyes to see Present Mike frowning worriedly. You all right? You give him a shaky grin. I'm okay. Well, as much as I can be, considering the situation. He nods. How about I pick you up and place you in the chair? Do you think that'll hurt a lot? Taking a few seconds to consider his suggestion, you finally respond. I think I'll be fine. That will definitely hurt less than me trying to stand. When the blonde moves to pick you up, You hold your breath and brace yourself since there's bound to be some pain from you moving. Thankfully, it's not as bad as when you were trying to sit up. President Mike gently cradles you against his seat before slowly depositing you in the wheelchair. Once you're safely in the wheelchair, you sigh in relief, happy about that part being over. Of course, you'll have to do this again once you have to get out of the wheelchair to get into the car, but you have a little time before you have to worry about that. So, you set aside that worry for now. A few minutes pass as midnight and President Mike squabble over who gets to push your chair before Aizawa has enough of their antics and takes the job himself. You giggle when the two pro heroes cry out in outrage. Recovery Girl just shakes her head before handing you some gummies. Take care of yourself, dear. Let me know if the pain gets any worse. You smile gratefully. I will. Thank you for taking care of me. Even though school isn't in session, there are reporters hanging around the entrance, so your group has to head to a back entrance to get to the car Nedzu prepared. Midnight immediately calls dibs on driving, much to present Mike's dismay. However, he quickly cheers up when you ask him to sit in the back seat with you, so while he sits with you, Aizawa takes shotgun. Thankfully, getting put into the car isn't too painful an endeavor, so after President Mike packs the wheelchair in the trunk, everyone gets situated, and Midnight starts driving toward the apartment. During the car ride, you pull out your cell phone and notice that Shinsou had texted you yesterday afternoon while you were asleep. According to Aizawa, the general department student had wanted to stay until you woke up, but since they didn't know at the time when that would be, the adults sent him home. Feeling guilty for worrying the boy, you quickly respond to his text and tell him that you're all right now. His reply is surprisingly fast, even though he usually takes his time when texting. As expected, Shinsou wants to know what happened, and you reluctantly explain your theory. There's a long pause after that message before Shinsou finally texts back. Your quirk really is a pain in the butt. I feel like I should complain less about mine now. At least, mine won't try to kill me. All you can do is snort. I couldn't agree more. After a peaceful car ride and a nice breakfast that was picked up on the way, you find yourself in bed with two cats keeping you company. While you weren't surprised that Shiro came to join you since she often comes to sleep with you, Kuro's appearance did catch you off guard since this is his first time doing so. You must have worried him enough that he decided you needed two guards. The only other person in the apartment is Aizawa because the other pro heroes got called away for hero work. Knowing him, Aizawa is likely fast asleep on the couch now, but you know if ever need him for anything all you need to do is call for him, and he'd be there. While you're happy to be in a comfortable bed in the company of two adorable cats, that doesn't change the fact that you're incredibly bored. Thankfully, that doesn't last for long once you think of a way to entertain yourself. Mindful of your still incredibly sore arms, you start taking pictures of the cats. As if realizing what you're doing, Shiro begins to move around, so you can get shots of all her different poses. Kuro doesn't do much, but you do get one blep from him, so you consider this a very successful photoshoot. Once you have enough ammo, you send a picture of Shiro to Shinsou, who immediately starts demanding more. Somehow, you end up in a strange picture exchange with a GD student. For every picture you send him, he sends one in return. Considering how fast his come in, you're pretty sure he has a whole album dedicated to cat pictures on his phone. Somehow, memes also get included in the exchange. You had no idea what a meme was before but thanks to Shinsou and Present Mike, you consider yourself very well educated on the subject now. Earlier this week, while you were both in the living room, you sent one to Aizawa just so you could see how he'd react, and he just stared at you blankly for several minutes before finally asking with a deadpan voice, "Why?" That was probably one of the funniest things you've ever seen. So, you decided after that day that every so often you'd send more memes his way since his exasperated expression makes you laugh. Of course, you also send him cat pictures you find online whenever you find an especially cute one. He never responds, but you know he enjoys getting them. A few hours after you start texting Shinsou, you fall asleep, your exhaustion finally stronger than the pain you're currently in. You end up sleeping through the majority of the day, not waking up until the later part of the afternoon. The reason you wake up is because you need to use the bathroom. It's at this moment you wish the bathroom was attached to the bedroom, but sadly, it is not. So, you slowly but surely shuffle toward the hallway, gritting your teeth every time your legs flare up with pain. The painkillers have definitely worn off. Unfortunately, you're not sure where Aizawa put the pill bottle, so taking more is not an option at the moment. Thankfully, Aizawa doesn't come by to check on you while you're doing your bathroom run because you really don't want to explain. This situation is bad enough as it is without the added embarrassment. In the end, everything works out fine. You have no problems once you make it inside the bathroom. Leaving the room is another story entirely. However, just as you're entering the hallway, your legs suddenly give out on you, making you cry out in surprise. With nothing to hold on to, all you can do is brace yourself for impact and hope the fall doesn't make everything worse. Much to your surprise, your fall is prevented thanks to a pair of arms that wrap around your shoulder and waist. While the sudden movement does cause you some pain, it's definitely not as bad as it could have been if you had actually hit the floor. When you look up, you see Aizawa frowning at you. At first, you wonder if he's upset with you, but then, you detect the slight concern in his gaze, letting you know that he's just worried. A sheepish smile forms on your face. "Thank you, Aizawa-san. Sorry for the trouble." He scrutinizes you for several seconds before finally sighing. "If it ever feels like your legs are about to give out, ask me for help. Don't push yourself unnecessarily." Embarrassed, you avert your eyes. "Right. I'll be more careful next time." You squeak in surprise when he carefully pulls you into a bridal carry. The older man rolls his eyes at your startled expression. "Did you really think I was going to let you walk back after you almost fell?" While his actions are perfectly reasonable, that doesn't change the fact that they're super embarrassing for you. Still, thanks to Aizawa, you're able to return to bed without any extra problems. Shiro and Kuro greet you both when their owner gently sets you on the bed. You giggle when they start demanding his attention, so he makes sure to pet them both. It's at that moment your stomach starts to growl, making you flush from embarrassment. Much to your distress, the underground hero obviously heard the noise since he turns his attention from the cats to you. You did sleep through lunch, so it makes sense that you're hungry. I'll put something together for you. Your eyes narrow suspiciously. "Did you eat lunch?" He rolls his eyes. "I was more interested in sleeping, but if it'll keep you from complaining, I'll eat something too." You smile, satisfied with his response. "Thank you. It's your first time getting to eat something prepared by Aizawa since you've been making the meals since you arrived." In the end, since it is the later part of the afternoon, the underground hero decides to make a simple meal of onigiri for the two of you. They're actually pretty good with just the right amount of salt. He also brings you some more painkillers which you are very thankful for. Aizawa surprises you when he opts to sit on the floor and eat there rather than return to the living room. He huffs when he notices your witty-eyed expression. "Gotta have an eyewitness, or you won't believe I ate something, right?" Kuro takes advantage of this moment by jumping onto the older man's shoulders and making himself comfortable there by wrapping around his owner's neck. The sight makes you chuckle. Shiro has decided to curl up near your waist as you sit propped up against every pillow present Mike could find. You felt bad for Aizawa, but Midnight was quick to reassure you that he could sleep without a pillow just fine. Obviously, she wasn't wrong, considering Aizawa slept through lunch like you did. After you finish your meal, you start petting the white cat who purrs happily in response. Her purring is the only thing you can hear in the room, but that's not surprising. Whenever you and Aizawa eat together, the meals are usually pretty quiet since the older man isn't normally very talkative. "Is the pain level about the same as this morning?" Aizawa asks. You blink in surprise before pausing to consider his question. "I think so. I mean, it hasn't gotten worse, but I don't think it's necessarily gotten better either." Aizawa turns his head, so he can look at you. The principal theorized that the pain won't last as long as it would have for the people who would have originally been injured. Do you agree? "Oh yeah. Netsu-san did bring that up at one point, didn't he? It was when Recovery Girl was examining me, so I wasn't really paying attention." You recall. A thoughtful frown forms on your face. "I don't know. I mean, it makes sense. Surely, my quirk won't incapacitate me for the normal healing PRD. I've never heard of a quirk having such a long-standing drawback. I'm hoping this won't last that long, or this is really gonna SCK. He snorts as he scratches Kuro under his chin. "No kidding. You'll be stuck in bed a long time if that's the case." You groan pitifully. "My quirk sucks." "Why is it like this?" The older man sighs as he slouches further against the bedside. "Beats me. I've heard of some pretty nasty drawbacks, but yours definitely has some of the worst. Just goes to show that you can't take messing with the future lightly. Your quirk is proof that there will always be consequences." You wince as you slide down so you can lie on your back. Even though you didn't walk very far, your little trip to the bathroom wore you out. Now that you don't have to worry about a hungry stomach, you can feel yourself steadily growing more tired. Shiro moves to sit on top of you, making you smile. "I just wish I could use my quirk to help people without having to worry about such serious drawbacks. I know I can't be a hero with it, but I'd still like to be useful." "Who says you aren't?" Caught off guard, you direct your wide eyes toward Aizawa, who's wearing a serious expression. "Because of you, we suffered strongly any injuries. All of the students were kept safe, which is why you came to us in the first place. You accomplished your goal." While you know he's right, you still can't help but feel guilty about how the attack changed. You avert your gaze. The attack ended up being even more dangerous than what it was supposed to be because the villains somehow knew that Yua was expecting their attack. You all had to worry about dealing with even more villains to fight, not to mention the one guy that had a barrier quirk who tried to block anyone from escaping or entering. He scoffs. We didn't have to worry about them long because you sent Mike to us as soon as you got a vision about the new attack. He took out the majority of the villains all on his own. Nothing that happened yesterday was your fault. You warned us the best you could. It was our fault for lacking in security. This wouldn't have happened in the first place if that DMN incident with the reporters was stopped in time. When you finally move your gaze back toward him, you notice how his eyes soften. Your quirk isn't useless. You've done a lot of good with it, so you should be proud. Your eyes widen at his words. Of all the things he could say, you weren't expecting the older man to actually compliment your quirk. He's the second person after Midoriya to say something like that to you. When you feel your eyes begin to water, you immediately shut them as you duck your head and do your best to keep yourself from crying. That's the last thing you want to do with Aizawa here. For as long as you can remember, you've never considered your quirk to be anything but a hindrance. What's the point in knowing the future if you can't tell anyone? The only thing you liked about it was you were able to find out about Midoriya, who became a source of inspiration to you because of it. You couldn't help but think that, if he had your quirk, he'd be able to make something great out of it. He always finds the good in every quirk he sees. You often wondered what he would do if he had your quirk. Of course, the answer was simple. Midoriya would find a way to help people with it since that's all he's ever wanted to do. He would have become a pro-hero with it. You have no doubts about that. But Midoriya wasn't the one who ended up with this quirk. You did, and there's nothing that can change that. However, there was something you could do. As soon as you started having visions about the green-haired boy facing danger, you knew you had to do something. You couldn't allow someone to interfere with Midoriya's future and make the boy you admire so greatly suffer. You needed to protect him. That's why you're here now, suffering from your quirk's newest drawback after successfully changing part of the future you saw in your visions. And you don't have a single regret. Finally, you've done something useful. A shaky smile forms on your face. Thank you, Aizawa-san. That means a lot to me. More than you can imagine. Your eyes open in surprise when you feel a hand ruffle your hair. It only stays there for a few seconds before Aizawa removes it. When you lift your head, you see that he's staring at you with a thoughtful expression now. After a few seconds pass, the older man averts his gaze. They were wrong. Whoever told you that you have a useless quirk was wrong. You shouldn't believe them. All you can do is gape at him with wide eyes. How did he? As if reading your mind, Aizawa rises to his feet with Kuro still across his shoulders and continues. It's pretty obvious to anyone who pays attention. I may not know the details of your background, but it's easy to see that you're not used to being complimented for your quirk. Rather, you were probably often told the exact opposite. He scratches under Kuro's chin, making the cat purr. I don't know who you were with all those years before now, but they're obviously an idiot. Those are the kind of memories you should be forgetting. With that, Aizawa moves to exit the room with the black cat in tow. Get some rest, in. For several minutes, you just stare at the doorway even after the underground hero leaves. It takes you a while to fully comprehend his words, but when it all finally sinks in, the corners of your lips curve upwards to form a wobbly smile as tears spring to your eyes. Despite your lack of memories, there is something you can clearly remember about your past. The one thing you wanted more than anything was to be acknowledged. All you wanted was for your efforts to be commended. Physical rewards meant nothing to you. As long as someone said those few words you desperately wanted to hear, you would have been satisfied. More than anything, you wished for someone to say that you weren't useless, that you could be helpful. And now, someone finally did. Even though you eventually fall asleep with tear tracks on your cheeks, this is the happiest you've been in a long time. You have nothing but good dreams. The next day goes by pretty slowly since you're stuck at the apartment alone with the cats. You had been surprised when Aizawa didn't seem bothered by letting you stay here by yourself. But he was quick to point out how illogical it would be to bring you to the school when you can barely walk on your own. He even went through the trouble of preparing some sandwiches and leaving them wrapped up on the bedside table so you can eat them for lunch. You made sure to thank him profusely for doing so. Throughout the day, Present Mike and Midnight text you to see how you're doing, and to just chat when they're free. Occasionally, you even get a text from Shinsou, but you scold him whenever he does it while he's in class. What really catches you by surprise is the message you get from All Might. You don't remember giving him your number, so someone else must have shared it with him. After hearing the full situation from the principal, All Might wanted to check on you, but that's not all. His main reason for texting you was to thank you. The symbol of peace seriously wanted to thank you for helping protect the students. You have to take several minutes to calm down or else you would have started crying like Midoriya. You're not mentally prepared enough for this. You're not used to being treated like this, so you have no idea how to properly handle your feelings. Thankfully, you do manage to eventually string together a coherent response. The rest of the day ends up pretty uneventful after that, so you have to resort to using the internet to entertain yourself in between naps. Around the time school lets out, you receive a message from Yaoyorozu. Once again, you find yourself fighting back tears because she sends you the sweetest message you've ever gotten. Unsurprisingly, Aizawa explained your absence to the class, so now the students know about your quirk's horrible drawback. After hearing about it, Yaoyorozu waited until the end of the day to text you because she was worried about disturbing your rest. In her text, she tells you how everyone wishes you a swift recovery and that everyone missed you in class. They all hope to see you soon. Eventually, after you take time to compose yourself, you respond to her message, telling her that you're all right and that you miss everyone as well. Thankfully, you do think you'll be able to see your students in the near future since the amount of pain you're in now is nowhere near as bad as it was the last 2 days. While you were pretty sore this morning, you started feeling better a few hours after Aizawa headed to UA, so you're feeling optimistic about your current situation. Not long after you finish texting Yaoyorozu, Aizawa returns to his apartment, and he does not come alone. Present Mike and Midnight decided to tag along, much to his annoyance. While the other pro heroes are squabbling about dinner in the kitchen, the underground hero hands you a get well card, which is not something you'd expect from the older man. When he sees your confused expression, he huffs in amusement. Just look inside, and you'll understand. You do as he suggests, and your eyes widen as you take in the card's contents. Inside are all of the Class 1 students' signatures along with individual messages wishing you well. A few of them even drew some cute doodles to decorate the card. They somehow even got Bakugo to sign the card, much to your amazement. While you don't think the blonde hates you, it's easy to tell that Bakugo doesn't know what to make of you. He's always surprised when you scold him for his rude behavior, but even more so when you do that and still compliment him whenever he does something impressive. It's obvious that the boy is not used to teachers treating him like that. Sure, he's received plenty of praise, but he's never been rebuked for his actions. Bakugo probably assumed after your first day at UA that that's all you'd end up doing. He figured you'd just be one of those teachers that did nothing but scold the rowdy students. However, you quickly proved him wrong whenever you would give him stickers for his good grades or compliment his fighting skills. While it's true you're not a huge fan of Bakugo because of what he did to Midoriya, instead of holding it over his head and punishing him, you want to help him improve as a hero and as a person. You hope someday he'll realize how he treated Midoriya when they were kids was wrong. The fact that he did, in fact, sign the card might be proof that he's on his way to that much-needed development. Of course, you know the road ahead of him is still long, and it won't be easy. Still, you can't help but hope for the best. A grin forms on your lips when you notice Shinsou's signature. Aizawa must have hunted the GD student down before he left for home so he could sign it. The purple-haired boy wrote a short get-well-soon message and even drew a cute little cat face by his name. As you continue to study the card, you realize it's not just student signatures you see. Your eyes widen when you see All Might's name in big lettering along with Nedzu's, 13's, Present Mike's, and Midnight's. They all wrote sweet messages, commending your strong work as they wished you well. That's your proof. Your head snaps up to look at Aizawa who's watching you. Huh. He points to the card. Whenever you think you're useless or unimportant, just look at that. Those signatures are proof that you're wrong. You and your actions do have value. Don't forget that. Tears spring to your eyes at his words. You immediately attempt to hide your face behind the card, so he can't see your teary expression. It's then that you notice a small doodle of a cat in the bottom left corner. The drawing stands out from the others because there's no message to go along with it. Despite this, it doesn't take you long to figure out who the artist is. After a particularly loud noise resounds from the kitchen, you watch him exit the room to go scold his friends. A sudden warmth fills your sin as you let Aizawa's words wash over you. You'll carve them deep into your heart so you won't ever forget them. Because this is one memory you never want to lose.